drinking black tea calmly at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476 You are the Minister of Magic. While Zhang Su was having a meeting to study the information from the International Federation of Wizards, Voldemort was having a meeting with the court Death Eaters in the living room of a house somewhere in England thousands of miles away. On the windows around the living room, heavy curtains blocked out the sunlight, and rows of burning candles floated in midair, providing light for the dimly lit living room. An exquisite long table that exudes a sense of history is placed in the center of the living room. Voldemort sits at the top, and the Death Eaters sit on both sides. Snape, with bandages on his head and hands, sat closest to Voldemort, and reported to Voldemort, "It has been found out that all the nails we planted in the original Ministry of Magic by Pierce Thicknesses are dead, and they most were killed in the Great Hall and the Department of Mysteries the day we took the Ministry of Magic." "Then do we still have officials from the original Ministry of Magic?" Voldemort said coldly without a trace of emotion. The Death Eaters below trembled and did not dare to speak. They knew that the black magic was very angry now, and the consequences would be serious. Voldemort is not a mountain eagle. He has to laugh 3 times before killing, and he will not engage in any ostentation before killing. Otherwise, they would have just started speaking out against Snape, who was at the Ministry of Magic at the time. "What about those who were captured?" Voldemort continued. "The Ministry of Magic was attacked twice in a short period of time," Snape said in a cold sweat. "According to the investigation, the people who attacked the first time killed almost all the people in the hall and the Department of Mysteries at that time. They also freed the hostages taken at the Weasley family wedding, and ransacked the time halls of the Department of Mysteries. Those who attacked the second time rescued all Ministry staff from the dungeon." "Do you know who these people are?" Voldemort asked. A red light flashed in his eyes. "The only survivor of the first attack was Draco Malfoy," Snape replied. "He met the first attacker." Voldemort turned his gaze to the other end of the long table, and the pony sitting at the end of the Death Eaters line trembled under Voldemort's gaze, and then said tremblingly, "Their leader is disguised as Snape's appearance." "Are you sure that's not the real Severus?" Bellatrix asked, casting a defiant look at Snape. Malfoy looked at the expressionless Snape, then at the Dark Lord, who looked at him like a poisonous snake staring at his prey, and then said cautiously, "That man's hair was washed very clean, so he must be a fake." The next moment, except for Snape, whose face was as cold as liquid nitrogen, all the Death Eaters present couldn't help laughing out loud. Even the corner of Voldemort's mouth twitched. "And do you know who impersonated Severus?" Bellatrix asked. Malfoy hesitated for a moment, and then chose the former between death sentence with reprieve and immediate execution. "It's Zhang Su. Those who were arrested that day were all his relatives and close friends. He came to save people." "Is he alone?" Voldemort asked. "All the people he took with him were not British," Snape replied. "From the traces of the spells on the scene and on the corpses, most of the people's spells were not from Hogwarts and the Auror office. Professor. The most important thing is that they did not hide their identities. On the wall of the Department of Mysteries, they left a lot of handwriting in American English, French and Russian." Voldemort nodded lightly. "He came to save people and robbed at the same time, which was in line with his understanding of Zhang Su, and those foreigners should be foreign guests who came to the wedding." Then he asked again, "What about the second time?" Snape replied, "The people who came for the second time were an Auror action team under the recently established International Auror Organization. They rescued all the people imprisoned in the dungeon and blew up the reference room of the Ministry of Magic and the only remaining elevator and fireplace. Whoever sees this organization in the future, don't keep alive." Voldemort said flatly, as if saying to eat chicken sandwiches and fruit salad for lunch. "Yes, Master," all the Death Eaters present replied in unison. "How many former Ministry of Magic employees are willing to follow us now?" Voldemort turned his head and asked Snape. Snape hesitated for a moment, then said, "There are less than 10 people." Voldemort snorted coldly, but judging from his expression, he obviously didn't care much about this question. Snape went on to report, "The Daily Prophet says they will remain neutral and not take sides." "These scumbags will pay the price," said Voldemort somewhat angrily. "But if he is angry, he is still unable to attack the most influential newspaper in the British wizarding world, because the relationship behind them is intricate, and if he is not careful, he will lose the only small part of his support." Snape continued, The radio station has basically been controlled by us. Except for a few famous announcers who were not there at the time, the rest of the staff will serve us from today on." Hearing this news, Voldemort's complexion became a little better, which is also a rare piece of good news. Voldemort looked around at the Death Eaters present, and said, "Then, I need someone to be our Minister for Magic." At this moment, the Death Eaters couldn't sit still. They originally planned to let the puppets sit in this position, but now that all the puppets are dead, they can only let them go to battle in person. "Master, your most loyal servant is willing to serve you." Karkaroff, who contributed a hand to Voldemort's resurrection, was the first to stand up and recommend himself. "You have been away from England for too long. You don't even know how many floors the Ministry of Magic has." As soon as Karkaroff opened his mouth, the other Death Eaters immediately objected. Especially those diehards who have been imprisoned in Azkaban for more than 10 years. They are unwilling to let those meritorious factions who have been free for more than 10 years sit in that position. Then Bellatrix also stepped up to fight for the spot. After all, the benefits that can be obtained from this position are too high, and everyone didn't care if they didn't have the opportunity before, but now that they have the opportunity, no one wants this position to fall into the hands of another faction. Seeing that Voldemort had no intention of stopping, the Death Eaters began to quarrel over the position. One said that the other party's ability was not good, and the other said that the other party's loyalty was insufficient, and there was a quarrel in the living room. After a while, Voldemort, who had been silent all this time, tapped the table with the Elder Wand, and the Death Eaters below fell silent. Voldemort looked at the door of the living room, and then said in an unquestionable tone, "Our new Minister of Magic is here." At this moment, the door of the living room opened, and Lucius Malfoy, who hadn't appeared for a long time, walked in from the door. "I'm back, Master." The old horse greeted Voldemort. "The plan is proceeding according to the established steps." After the old horse finished speaking, he nodded slightly to Bellatrix. Voldemort ignored what the old horse said behind him, but asked, "Lucius, do you have any difficulties in becoming the Minister of Magic?" The old horse said without thinking, "My master, under your leadership, there are always more solutions than difficulties." Chapter 477. The night was deep, and it would be dawn soon, and the meeting in the compound in the suburbs of Beijing was drawing to a close. Regarding how to respond to the forthcoming invitation from the International Federation of Wizards, the various departments participating in the meeting made detailed analysis and judgments, and formed meeting minutes for the leadership's reference. Sending peacekeeping troops abroad requires the approval of the leaders sitting in the first row of the rostrum. The minutes of today's meeting are an important basis for their decision-making. Just as everyone was packing up and preparing to end the meeting, a major officer in military uniform hurried in. The major officer saluted and reported to Elder Joe, "Sir, this is the latest news from Britain." Then he put a cassette in front of Mr. Joe. Elder Joe glanced at the mark on the tape, and asked a major officer to put the tape into the stereo in the conference room and play it. "Ladies and gentlemen, today, we stand here in Wizarding Land. Zhang Su, who was drinking tea, choked into his lungs with a sip of tea. When did Lao Ma give such a powerful and inspiring speech? How many episodes of speech and eloquence he has learned." After the old horse's speech in the speaker was over, the major officer who came to deliver the information took a document and said, "An hour ago, Lucius Malfoy became the British Minister of Magic." Immediately, he published this in the British Ministry of Magic. An inaugural speech. His speech was simulcast live and heard on radios around the world. Zhang Su looked at Mr. Zhao and asked, "Why did he release him so quickly?" Mr. Zhao spread his hands and said, "According to Article 156 of the Criminal Law, whoever deliberately destroys public or private property, if the circumstances are serious, shall be sentenced to fixed term imprisonment of not more than 3 years, criminal detention or a fine. According to Article number 70, he shall be sentenced to public surveillance, criminal detention, fixed term imprisonment. Criminals who have been sentenced to life imprisonment may have their sentences reduced if they truly repent or perform meritorious service during the execution period." He showed repentance both during the interrogation and in the court, and the financial compensation was actively paid, so the court sentenced him to 2 months detention and fined him. During his sentence, he worked actively, repented deeply, and he performed meritorious service. He rescued a prisoner who was bitten by a poisonous snake while working in the field, so his sentence was reduced by 2 weeks. On the day you returned to China, he was released and went back. A mouthful was stuck in Zhang Su's throat, and he didn't know how to spit it out. Elder Zhao ignored Zhang Su, looked at the time, and said to the people in the conference room, "It's almost dawn, everyone go back to the dormitory to rest, and we will have a meeting to discuss this matter at 8:30 in the morning." Dividing Line USA, New York, Woolworth Building. This is the seat of the Magical Congress of America. In the lobby on the first floor of the Woolworth Building, wizards in the United States were already in a state of panic. They suddenly found that the pointer of the magic exposure level clock hanging above the lobby had just slipped to unexplainable severe situation and the verge of emergency. On the top floor of the magic side of the Woolworth Building, Samuel Culhog, the newly appointed chairman of the Magical Congress of America, stood in front of the window of his office, frowning and looking out the window at the busy streets of New York. Beside him, Malfoy's cadenced speech was playing on the radio. Then there was a knock at the door. After the door of the office opened automatically, Mrs. Adams, dressed in a smart business attire, walked in. "Are you looking for me, Mr. Cowhog?" asked Mrs. Adams. "Do you know anything about England?" Cowhog asked after turning around and nodding. "I have listened to the radio," Mrs. Adams replied. "Tanya, what do you think about this matter?" Cowhog asked. "If the British continue to make trouble like this, the wizarding world will be exposed to the no-mages," said Mrs. Adams. "The exposure of the wizarding world is a foregone conclusion. It is only a matter of time. In the East, everything started from there." Cowhog said, "You are one of the few wizards among us who have cooperated with the no-mage government. Is it a good thing or a bad thing?" Mrs. Adams looked at Cowhog, who had brought up the old story, and after thinking carefully for a while, said solemnly, "Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, the key depends on how our Congress and the no-mage government guide public opinion. I think the initiative must be in our hands. These talents are in our interest." After Cowhog turned around in front of the window a few times, he changed the subject and said to Mrs. Adams, "You know the decision of the International Federation of Wizards. I order you to form a capable team to sneak into the UK. After receiving the order, go to war now." Cowhog sat back in his office chair, leaned back, sighed and said, "I'm worried that if the British situation continues like this, Grindelwald's lurking supporters on our side will jump out and make trouble." Gone. Dividing Line. British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who had just returned to No. Downing Street from the headquarters of the Ministry of Defence in Whitehall, Westminster, London, sat behind his desk, silently looking at the gorgeous crystal chandelier on the ceiling of the office. "This day as Prime Minister is different from what I expected. I originally thought that my job was to improve the employment rate internally, improve the level of public security, and deal with the world's major countries externally. In your free time, drink champagne on the recliner in the study and pass the time with your favorite large-scale magical novel Dumbledore, or take the young cartoonist Maggie McGonagall's Dumbledore fan comics Hogwarts afternoon tea time to tell the children how Dumbledore's students used their ingenuity to trick a 1,000-year-old snake into the huge soup pot in the kitchen with the help of a giant panda, or the panda almost cooked the story of a big black dog who was wrongfully imprisoned." As a result, after he took the position of Prime Minister for the first time, someone suddenly told him that the biography of Dumbledore is not a fantasy novel, but a documentary literature. On that day, Blair finally knew why Jim Hook had asked him to have emergency cardiac medication ready when he handed over work with him. But fortunately, after Blair saw another world hidden on British soil, and met Dumbledore and the big black dog that was almost boiled, he didn't use those first aid medicines because Dumbledore cured him in the first place. At this time, Blair finally knew what kind of mess he was facing. Fortunately, there is no unparalleled road, and Her Majesty the Queen told him that we also have our own wizards. Although I doubt whether I am living in a dream, the necessary work is still to be done. The current situation has become so corrupted that the only way to eliminate those extreme terrorist organizations that have rebelled against the stable life of the people of Great Britain is with iron and blood." Following the order issued by the British Ministry of Defence, a number of elite British armed forces equipped with special equipment set off to northern Scotland in the name of exercises. Dividing Line. In the office of the French Minister of Magic, the French Minister of Magic responded immediately. The head of the French Foreign Wizards received an order signed by the Minister of Magic, and then happily left the minister's office. Chapter 478. Feeling that someone's Zhang will be safe when school begins. In the living room where the Death Eaters were meeting, Voldemort sat on the main seat, looked at Lucius Malfoy on the right hand with satisfaction, and said, "You've done a good job, Lucius." After the heartwarming speech, our people's morale was greatly boosted, and at the same time, Some people who were vacillating before joined our team, and our team is growing day by day. Lao Ma said modestly, under the leadership of the Master, our team will become stronger and stronger, and move from one victory to another. Voldemort was very satisfied with the performance of the old horse, and nodded to him. This scene aroused the envy and hatred of other Death Eaters. The next moment, Voldemort stood up and scanned the Death Eaters present with icy eyes. None of the Death Eaters dared to look at Voldemort, and all lowered their heads. Someone said in the newspaper that I was sick here. Voldemort said suddenly, pointing to his head. They were right, but they were also wrong. Voldemort walked out of his seat as he spoke, and walked around the long table where the Death Eaters were sitting. Something is sick, but it's not me that's sick, it's the world that's sick, Voldemort shouted. Then he said in a calm tone, this world is sick, those covered up truths, those mudbloods who have stolen our great magical knowledge and power are viruses, and where is the antidote we are looking for? At this moment Voldemort walked up behind Draco Malfoy at the other end of the long table, leaning on the top of the pony's chair with one hand, bent his waist as soft as a water snake, and put his head next to the pony's face. Tell me, Draco. Voldemort whispered into the pony's ear, did the Hogwarts professor teach you, where's our antidote? It's all up to us to get back the magic fruit, replied the sweaty pony. Very well, said Voldemort loudly. A spell is justice. A spell brings freedom wherever the wand goes. As a wizard's world, we have to cut out those parts that are harmful to the overall interests from the wizarding world, just like pruning off the unhealthy branches and leaves of a big tree, and then step them all into the mud. Your goal is my mission, my master. Lao Ma was the first to stand up and express his loyalty. Then the other Death Eaters stood up and shouted together, your goal is my mission, my master. The enemy is Hogsmeade, Voldemort said, pointing to the north with the Elder Wand. Those people are trying to stop the torrent of history rolling in like the Thames with their weak hands. Now, we're going to let them know what power is and what a wizard's power is. Right now I am Voldemort faltered for less than a second, and then continued, I order you, Igor Karkaroff, to lead everyone to destroy those worms that are overpowering to resist us. Hearing that the job of Commander-in-Chief fell on his own head, Karkaroff replied excitedly, I will bring you back the glory of victory. My master. Voldemort turned and left the living room where the morale had been mobilized, and then walked back to his room with a bit of a distorted movement, took out a bottle of painkillers from the cabinet and drank it in one gulp. At the same time, in the student dormitory of Gryffindor in Hogwarts Castle, there were bursts of inaudible groans. On the bed, Harry was limp and pale, lying limply on the bed like a deflated blow-up doll. His empty eyes stared blankly at the curtains on the top of the bed, and he let out one or two sounds of pain from time to time, groans. A few minutes later, Professor McGonagall pushed open the door of the dormitory, holding a bottle of potion in her hand. Seeing Harry, who was only half alive on the bed, Professor McGonagall shook his head helplessly. What is this, Harry? It's time to take your medicine. It won't hurt after taking the medicine. Harry saw tears in her eyes when she saw Professor McGonagall. She wanted to sit up, but she couldn't make any effort. Professor McGonagall sighed, put the medicine bottle on the bedside cabinet, then helped Harry up to sit up, and then used the pillow to give. She patted her back. After settling Harry down, Professor McGonagall picked up the medicine bottle and slowly fed it to Harry, who seemed to be dying. It took Harry almost 2 minutes to finish a bottle of medicine. After taking a few breaths, he laid down again with the help of Professor McGonagall. After drinking the medicine, Harry's expression improved a little. Does it still hurt? Professor McGonagall asked. Harley, who had no strength to speak, shook her head with difficulty. You have a good rest. I'll ask Dobby to bring you food later, Professor McGonagall said after heaving a sigh of relief. She hasn't prepared this kind of potion for many years, and it seems that there is no problem because of hand. After Professor McGonagall left the dormitory room, Black and Lupin, who were waiting anxiously outside the door, stepped forward and asked, How is Harry? She's fine, said Professor McGonagall. Just let her rest for a day or two. Oh, I didn't expect such a thing to happen to Harley. Black sighed and said, If I knew this, I wouldn't let him become a girl. Professor McGonagall shook her head and said nothing. She had thousands of things to vomit, but she didn't know where to start. Lupin on the side said worriedly, We just got the information that the Death Eaters are about to attack Hogsmeade on a large scale, so we have to make preparations in the castle. Then Harry. Black looked worriedly at the door of Harry's dormitory. Let Ron and the others protect Harry, Lupin said, that way we don't have to worry. Black remembered one thing, and said, Neville is in Hogsmeade now, and his family moved there by themselves, so we can still let him come over." After the three made their decision, they began to separately arrange the defense of Hogwarts and notify Ron that they were coming. At this time, Harry, who had recovered a little, was lying on the bed. 2 lines of tears slipped down from his godless eyes. Only at this time did she experience how difficult and great it is to be a woman. She thought of her mother again, how happy it would be if her mother could be by her side at this time. "Harry, are you in there?" Neville's voice came from the door of the dormitory. "I heard Professor Lupin say that you are sick." Harry was startled, and then hurriedly pulled up the quilt to cover himself. Neville walked over to Harry's bed, staring at the big bag made of the quilt in a daze, wondering what the hell was going on. "Why are you hiding under the quilt, Harry?" Neville asked curiously. "Did you grow cat ears?" Seeing that there was no movement in the quilt, Neville was very curious. He received a note from Lupin at home, saying that Harry was not feeling well and needed protection when he was in the dormitory, so he felt obliged to immediately rush over. Neville thought Harry was just having some innocuous ailment, or else he'd be lying in the school infirmary instead of the dormitory, so Neville guessed that his problem was not serious, and after seeing that the other party didn't want him to see him, Neville guessed that Harry had accidentally turned into a funny look like front teeth or oversized nostrils. Harry's current reaction made him feel that his guess was right. After so many years of people becoming weird, everyone played around like this in the dormitory. "Come on, let me see." Neville knelt on the edge of the bed and reached out to lift Harry's quilt. He found that the quilt was grabbed by the other party as expected. "Be obedient, let me see." Neville stepped up his fight for the quilt. Harley, who had just recovered a little strength, was no match for Neville, and Neville threw her quilt up within 2 strokes. Seeing the tearful girl's face under the quilt, Neville was stunned. In the next second, Neville's eyes went dark, and he didn't know anything. Ginny, who was standing at the door of the dormitory, put down her hand holding the wand, said with a sigh of relief, "Harry's innocence is finally preserved." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 479. At the Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, France, after saying goodbye to the clingy Gabriel, Zhang Su was waiting for the plane to Edinburgh. The kidnapping incident not long ago left Gabriel with some psychological shadows. Now she is in the recovery period, she is a little quiet and just clings to someone. Zhang. Since the Ministry of Magic was already occupied by Voldemort and the others, Zhang Su avoided London for safety reasons. There is still some time before the boarding time. After inviting the legend of Charles de Gaulle Airport, Mayor Home Karimina Saleh, to have a cup of coffee, Zhang Su, who is sitting in the coffee shop, takes out a book from his backpack and just bought it in the bookstore. To pass the time I bought the latest episode of Tea Time at Hogwarts. It's an interesting cartoon, isn't it? A beautiful lady in her 20s sat across from Zhang Su with a cup of coffee. I thought of it because I was accosted by someone Zhang because of my suave looks. Zhang Su glanced at the beautiful woman sitting across from him, and saw that she looked at the comic book in Zhang Su's hand, and stared at his face at other times. "It's really an interesting comic," Zhang Su replied after putting the comic book on the table. "It's really interesting to live in such a school." "Then which character in this series do you like the most?" asked the beauty opposite, with a hint of expectation in her tone. Zhang Su seemed to be thinking, and then said decisively, "I like the giant panda that always helps the students at critical moments." "Me too," the beautiful woman said excitedly. "Every time I draw it, its silly appearance always comes to my mind. In order to draw it well, I often go to the London Zoo to observe the animals there." "How a giant panda usually lives." "You are Maggie McGonagall, the author of this series of comics?" Zhang Su asked in surprise. "That's right, it's me," Maggie McGonagall said proudly. "Do you need me to sign for you?" Zhang Su handed over the comics on the desktop. After Maggie took the comics, she signed her name on the title page, and then drew a simple picture of a giant panda holding a bamboo in the blank space strokes. Zhang, who was reminded of painful memories by the stick figure, took the cartoon from Maggie with a smile on his face, and then there was a wave of commercial praise. "How did you come up with such an interesting plot?" Zhang Su asked casually. After Maggie looked around and found that no one noticed them, she pulled a chair and sat beside Zhang Su, then put her head next to Zhang Su, and said in a low voice, "I can tell you quietly, in fact, in the comics a lot of the stories in the book were told by my aunt, and I did some processing on the stories she told." Then Zhang Su asked calmly, "Then there should be a character in the comics based on your aunt." "That's right," Maggie said happily. "Guess which character in the comics is my aunt?" Someone Zhang picked up the comic book and turned to the page of character introduction, and then pretended to study there who was based on the character created by Maggie McGonagall's aunt. After excluding the honest and kind-hearted professor of botany, the professor of ancient magic literature like a nerdy researcher, and the professor of mathematics with an unknown age, Zhang Su's fingers stopped at the knowledgeable but serious and rigid professor who was very serious about the students. Always on the avatar of the loving cat-turning professor. "I think she should be your aunt," Zhang Su said to Maggie seriously. "That's right," Maggie said excitedly. "I didn't expect you to guess right all at once." Zhang Su sighed in his heart. As expected, some revenge seems impossible to avenge. "Do you have any suggestions for comics?" Maggie asked. After thinking for a while, Zhang Su said, "I suggest that the giant panda should not eat bamboo all the time, but let it eat cakes, puffs, egg tarts, sandwich biscuits and other snacks. If I change to a different kind of snack for the first time, I believe readers will like this character even more." After listening to Zhang Su's words, Maggie thought about it intently, and then said to Zhang Su, "I will seriously consider your suggestion, and I will try your suggestion in the next issue." At this time, Zhang Su looked at his watch and found that it was not far from the boarding time, so he said to Maggie, "Miss McGonagall, the plane to Edinburgh is ready to board, and we will meet again if we have a chance." After bidding farewell to Maggie McGonagall, Zhang Su took his luggage and ran away after finishing their bills, leaving Maggie McGonagall sitting there alone. If you don't run, you can't do it. Although Zhang is sometimes unrestrained, he still knows how to measure. He will introduce himself after chatting. He doesn't know if Professor McGonagall has said his name to her niece, but if Maggie and Professor McGonagall say, "Auntie, I chatted up a guy from your school 2 days ago, a handsome guy named Zhang Su," then there is a high probability that the Hogwarts professor's dumplings for the start of school this year will be stuffed with giant pandas. It's just that people are not as good as God. We meet again. On the passenger plane, Maggie greeted Zhang Su who was sitting beside her. Looking at the confused Zhang Su, Maggie explained with a smile, "I live in Edinburgh, and I came to France to discuss some business matters with a publisher. Remember, I haven't introduced myself yet." Zhang Su said helplessly, "My name is Zhang Su, and I'm an international student in the UK. Which school do you study in?" Maggie asked happily. "We can come out to play during the holidays." Someone Zhang replied in a cold sweat, "Our school is very remote, and not many people know about it. Moreover, the management of the school is very strict, and you can't leave the school at ordinary times. And you can't even use your mobile phone or telephone. It's the same as my previous school, quite boring." Maggie said a little dejectedly, "We can only go to the village near the school occasionally." Zhang Su smiled and said nothing. He could understand this, and it seems that Professor McGonagall didn't tell her niece his name, which is also a relief to him. During the next 2 hours of flight time, the two talked about the interesting content in the cartoons drawn by Maggie, and Zhang Su also appropriately provided Maggie with some of his original ideas, such as a certain beautiful schoolmaster who accidentally took the wrong medicine and became a cat girl. A certain rich second-generation secretly fell in love with a beautiful woman far away in the United States. Girls, the daily life of a certain crazy girl who was out of state and was taught by a giant panda with a hand knife, etc. Professor McGonagall doesn't know about it. Maggie took out a notebook and carefully recorded all the ideas put forward by Zhang Su. After the plane landed, Maggie and Zhang Su made an appointment to have dinner together tonight, and then went home with their luggage. "I'm back, Dad." Back home, Maggie greets her father, Robert McGonagall Jr. "Is this trip to England going well?" Robert Jr., who was reading a newspaper with a cigarette in his mouth, asked his daughter. "Everything went well. I met an interesting person at the airport," Maggie said to her father while directing the suitcase to fly back to her bedroom with her magic wand. "I'm going to change clothes first, and I invited him to dinner tonight." Like many fathers, Robert Jr. was extremely sensitive to the inadvertent leaks in his daughter's words. Little Robert thought while reading the newspaper, could it be that the cabbage in our family will become a pig? Why not write to the elder sister to discuss with her? She has always loved Maggie very much, and Maggie also likes this aunt very much. I believe the elder sister will definitely. I will help Maggie check it out, but the eldest sister should be very busy at this time. so I hope she won't be disturbed. In less than a cigarette, Robert Jr. had already thought of the names of his grandchildren. At this time, Maggie was sitting at the desk in her room, writing a letter to her aunt on a piece of parchment. Dear Aunt Minerva, I just got back from France and the trip to France went well. Let me tell you, I met an interesting guy at an airport in France. His name is Zhang Su, and he is a student studying abroad in a school as strict as Hogwarts in Scotland. When I saw him at the airport, he was reading my comics, and I found that his expression was very focused when he read the comics. It didn't look like he was reading humorous and interesting comics, but was reading a Transfiguration textbook. At the same time, Zhang Su, who had just stayed at the Rockwell Hotel, suddenly shivered while looking at the sea view outside the window. Feeling that something big was about to happen, Zhang Su took out a tortoise shell containing copper coins. After shaking it with a specific technique, the tortoise shell in his hand suddenly slipped from his hand. I'm sorry, this is a bad omen that even God can't bear to see it. Chapter 480. Little Swallow, wearing a floral dress, came here with 2 cats. With a breath of the sea, the city is more transparent. In the days of this late summer and early autumn, the weather in Edinburgh, which is located in a high-latitude area, is starting to get a little cold. In this subpolar low-pressure belt where the mid-latitude westerlies meet the polar easterly winds, the easterly winds unexpectedly overwhelm the westerly winds this season today, and the cold northeasterly winds from the Arctic Circle blow across the Firth of Forth, north of Edinburgh. After landing, I didn't take a few steps before I met a guy who was trying to fight against the mighty force of nature. The cold wind passed through the beach, and after passing through the railing, he found that he was unable to move an inch in front of a human being, so he could only bypass him and continue to the city further south. Zhang Su stood on the side of the road behind the beach, leaning on the railing and watching the rolling waves not far away. After a while, the sound of meow meow sounded, and 2 cats appeared at Zhang Su's feet, rubbing their heads against his feet. Zhang Su, with black hair, picked them up, put them on the railing, and then gave them a shelter from the wind and a heating technique. At this time, a person came to Zhang Su's side and stood shoulder to shoulder with him. Lend me your shoulder for 5 seconds. After Wales finished speaking, he rested his head on Zhang Su's shoulder and took a deep breath. In the 6th second, Zhang Su felt the soft body that had been relaxed next to him tense up again. What's wrong? Zhang Su asked softly. Wales did not return the shoulder to Zhang Su, her head was still resting on it, and the golden hair in her fringe patted randomly on Zhang Su's face under the sea breeze. Work pressure is high, I am tired, and I want to retire. Welsh said. You are under pressure, and I am also under pressure. Zhang Su replied. After a while, Wales said softly, those idiots sitting in the office let me seduce you. Zhang Su said with black lines, so you kidnapped Ginger and Fish Cake and planned to elope with me. Wales looked at the fish cake lying on the railing and was yawned by Zhang Su's scratching, and said, I think Ginger and Fish Cake are more attractive than me in front of you, so I brought them. So look it for their sake, you can at least put your wand away. Zhang Su raised his right hand, which had been hanging down just now, and saw the top of the wand sticking out of the sleeve against his palm. In less than a second, Zhang Su was able to cast a spell with the wand. Without taking back the wand, Zhang Su scratched Zhang's chin with a hand with the wand, and said, there's no need to drag the innocent cat into the water. If you have anything to do, just come to me. Besides, Hood and Hair will allow you to do so, then you will follow me. It will be convenient for everyone, Wales said. I told Hood that I was going to walk the cats, and then I brought them out. If you think you can succeed, then you can try it. Anyway, I always only eat tofu and don't suffer. Zhang Su replied indifferently. Wales returned Zhang Su's shoulder to him, then brushed his hair that was blown by the wind with his hands, and said in a nonchalant manner, I don't think I will suffer, as long as you can help me deal with the office. Those annoying idiots in there will do, then I'll try. At this moment, Zhang Su found that Wales was so amazing. It's not that Zhang Su has never experienced sexual temptation, it's just that the little girls in Hogwarts used to be too poor, and they behaved too artificially, too deliberate, almost ran into Zhang Su at the corner while running in the corridor with the van in his mouth when rushing to class. Now meeting such a straightforward and unpretentious professional female agent who is different from those fake White Lotus, Zhang Su almost took out a card from his pocket and handed it to her. There are 3,000 million in it, max it out. However, when a large amount of money is involved, Mr. Zhang's mind can always return to normal in time. Fortunately, he has a lot of things in his bag, and it is very simple to take out a temporary change. I have a coupon for the Golden Arch here, please use it for me when you are free. How did you catch up with your girlfriend? Looking at the coupon in Zhang Su's hand, Welsh rolled his eyes and said, sentenced to drink enough water. Zhang Su replied, you'd better take ginger and fish cakes to eat. Welsh stuffed the ginger and fish cakes lying on the railing into Zhang Su's arms. Cats are different from you. They can't eat high-fat and high-salt food. Zhang Su said to Wales, so you should eat. After hanging the ginger and fish cakes on his shoulders, Zhang Su stuffed the coupons into Welsh's hands. Are you free tonight? Wales asked, waving the coupon in his hand. I have an appointment for dinner. Zhang Su said. Can I go to Singfun? Wales asked, I just eat and don't talk. Zhang Su turned his head to look at Wales speechlessly, and said, today's blindfold is quite cute. Thank you, said Wales, I sewed it myself. Very cute little rabbit. Zhang Su continued to change the subject, I think it suits you quite well. The golden rose last time is suitable for you to wear at work, and this one is suitable for you in daily life. So which one do you want me to wear next time we meet? Wales asked. Zhang Su didn't speak, but used magic to draw a funny face on the railing next to him. Then Zhang Su asked, what do you want from me? Wales pointed to the little rabbit on the eye patch on his left eye, and then said, it's not working time, so we can leave work alone. I might say some things in my daily life, but I might forget them when I'm working, Zhang Su said. Wales said nothing, and left with ginger and fish cakes. After finishing this endless conversation with the spy saw that it was almost time for a date tonight, so he started to walk back to the hotel. Today's matter is big or small, he doesn't understand what the hell is going on with such a conversation that looks like playing hard to get after the other party calls and asks him to come out. If it is a normal information exchange, the other party can say it directly. Now there is a lot of information exchanged through the official channels of the relevant departments of the two countries, as well as Zhang Su and her private channels. If the other party wanted to attack her in order to achieve a certain purpose, why did she tell herself in advance, and was she telling the truth? Facing this kind of situation where fakes are real and sometimes real and fake, he can only respond to all changes by remaining unchanged, as long as the other party doesn't shoot him in the back. Zhang Su, who had been walking while thinking about the problem, didn't notice that someone on the opposite side of the road not far away had seen the scene of the two of them talking just now. Chapter 481 The Wind at 5 meters per second. Arthur's Seat. This is not the throne of a foolish king, but a mountain in Holyrood Park, Edinburgh, Scotland. At the same time, it is an extinct volcano with a history of 3.5 million years. In other words, it has witnessed the second to fifth mass extinctions on the Earth, and it has also circled the Milky Way. Under the effect of the cold air mass, there is not a trace of cloud in the sky tonight. A crescent moon hangs in the sky. The stars in the night sky and the lights of Edinburgh complement each other. On the top of the mountain, Maggie McGonagall was sitting on the ground, and Zhang Su was standing on her right. Against the backdrop of the sky full of stars, it was quite like the scene where Takaki Tano and Akari Shinohara were waiting for the sunrise in the wild. After the two happily ate a seafood feast and chatted about comics in the restaurant, they came to the nearby Holyrood Park for a walk. After coming out of the restaurant, the atmosphere between the two suddenly became weird. No one spoke first, they just walked quietly in the park together, and then came to Arthur's throne unknowingly. Feeling the cold wind blowing at a speed of 5 meters per second, Zhang Su conceived in his mind how to speak. After a short contact, Zhang Su had a better understanding of Maggie's character. She is almost a copy of Professor McGonagall. She is strong, assertive, and good at expressing her own ideas. In addition, she has the innocence that Professor McGonagall rarely showed in Hogwarts. Delete a certain cat in Hogwarts catching butterflies in the flowers to play, and all the professors will ignore it. Delete. Now he didn't know what Maggie thought of him, whether he regarded him as a friend who could talk about everything, or fell in love with him at first sight. If it's the former, then everyone is happy, and if it's the latter, then you're in big trouble. And he opened his mouth without knowing it clearly. If he expresses the wrong feelings, Zhang will suddenly be embarrassed and have advanced cancer. Who is the person chatting with you at the beach this afternoon? Maggie asked suddenly. In the afternoon, she decided to go to Zhang Su in advance, only to see him chatting with a woman who seemed close to him, and they also have two cats, who seemed to be very affectionate with both of them. It wasn't until now that she asked this question. Maggie saw herself talking with Ginger, Fish Cake, and Welsh by the sea. which made Zhang Su feel a little relieved. He was a little surprised and asked, "You don't know her? I thought you had met." "Why do I know her?" Maggie asked curiously. "They are tenants of your aunt's house. I thought you had met before." Zhang Su replied. "Oh, one of the proprietresses of that coffee shop." Maggie said in surprise, "You know my aunt, so you are also a wizard. You said you came to study abroad. Are you a student of Hogwarts? Because the actual age of the body is a bit older than the age of the certificate, and the temperament is more mature than the age." After Zhang Su deliberately dressed up, people who are not familiar with him will think that he is in his early 20s when they look at him up. There is no way. Who told his wife to be a female junior, holding a gold brick? Otherwise it would be against harmony to walk together. There is not much market for little fresh meat these days, and someone who looks handsome is said to be sissy. The standard of handsome guys is still Zhu Shimeo and Kegu King. So Maggie was a little surprised that Zhang Su's actual age was more than 2 gold bricks younger than herself, but at the next moment, she remembered Zhang Su's other identity. "You are the giant panda." Maggie jumped up excitedly and said, "Can you change it for me to see?" Looking at Maggie's eyes full of excitement and expectation, Zhang Su realized that he had seen such eyes when Ginny and the others played Miracle Halley. Ahem, it's not convenient here. Zhang Su absolutely rejected Maggie's request, and turned into an animagus form on the top of the mountain next to the city. This is the rhythm of a big death. Let me introduce myself again. I am Zhang Su, a 7th-year student at Hogwarts Ravenclaw College. Zhang Su hurriedly avoided the topic of turning himself into a giant panda. My aunt only told me that there is an international student from the East in Hogwarts whose animagus form is a giant panda, but she never told me your name. Maggie complained. Zhang Su thinks this is inevitable, because he has died a lot in human form, fed small fish, sucked the wrong cat, and so on. I'm going to be a man with my tail between my legs. How come you are so close to the proprietress of that coffee shop? Is she your girlfriend? Returning to the question at the beginning, Maggie's voice became deeper and deeper as she asked. Zhang Su sighed in his heart, and then said, "No, she is my partner. My girlfriend is in my hometown." Maggie, who was a little happy at first, suddenly became lonely and lonely. After a while, Maggie, who had regained her mentality, squeezed out a smile, and then asked, "Are you and her going to open a coffee shop together?" Zhang Su sighed secretly again. It seems that this niece of Professor McGonagall is far away from the political circle. Now everyone in the circle knows the background of those four, and her name has almost spread in the circle, but she unheard of this. No. Zhang Su shook his head and said, "We are like-minded partners on the road against a mysterious man." "You want to participate in this war too?" Maggie asked in surprise, and at the same time grabbed Zhang Su's sleeve nervously. "Yes." Zhang Su looked up at the last quarter moon in the sky and said, 6 years ago, I came to Hogwarts for this war. After this battle is over, I will go back to my hometown and get married." What Zhang Su said was obvious. The cold wind tonight came from the Arctic Ocean, passed through the Norwegian Sea, passed through the Firth of Forth, passed through Edinburgh, and then passed between the two at a speed of 5 meters per second. After an unknown amount of time, Maggie asked, "If I wrote you a letter, would you write back? I want to ask you about some comic plots." Maggie continued. "Yes." Zhang Su nodded. "Then I'll go back first." After Maggie finished speaking, she turned around and disapparated away with a biu. Standing alone on the top of the mountain, Zhang Su had a bird's eye view of the brightly lit Edinburgh and the waves of the sea. A cat walked silently into a shadow not far from Zhang Su, and then walked out of the shadow alone. "Maggie's child is very similar to me when I was young," Professor McGonagall said to Zhang Su, who had been looking into the distance. "It can be seen." Zhang Su replied. "What I'm most afraid of is that she will follow my old path." Professor McGonagall continued. Zhang Su, who knew what Professor McGonagall meant, sighed, not knowing how to respond. Professor McGonagall met her first love that year, but the two had nothing to do with each other. It was not until almost 30 years later that the first lover died unexpectedly that Professor McGonagall was freed from the shackles of feelings and agreed to the marriage proposal of another suitor who had pursued her for almost 30 years. "If it doesn't work, I'll give her a forgetting curse." Zhang Su said, "If it doesn't work, I'll ask Hermione to do it. She is very good at this spell." In the next second, he flew down from the nearly 200-meter-high mountain. Chapter 482, A Death Eater and number 039, S Memory Kill. At the foot of a hill on the outskirts of Manchester lies a rather small manor. This manor is one of the properties of the Malfoy family, but now it has become a place where Death Eaters from abroad who defected to Voldemort live. Heinsofulo was sitting at the table in the living room, carefully wiping his wand with a cloth soaked in the potion. Heinsofulo has typical Germanic appearance features: blonde hair, blue eyes, high nose bridge and deep-set eye sockets. If time goes back 60 years, he will definitely be selected for the Source of Life project. His movements were very gentle, and the piece of cloth in his hand lightly slid across the wand, leaving a trace of the potion. The expression on his face was very calm, and there was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. People who were not familiar with him thought he was just a beautiful young man who was quietly maintaining his wand. The wand in his hand became like a sponge, and the bright red potion on it was absorbed by the wand at a speed visible to the naked eye. Around the table the Death Eaters were divided into small circles, discussing the impending battle. They all deliberately lowered their voices so as not to disturb Heinsofulo, who is maintaining his wand. The Death Eaters in this stronghold are all dark wizards from the European continent. They either agree with Voldemort's ideas, or gather under Voldemort's command for their own interests. On the first day, a dark wizard once laughed at Heinsofulo's maintenance of the wand. As a result, all the capillaries under the skin of the dark wizard burst on the spot, and his blood sprayed out from his whole body like a spray. Although the black wizards are ruthless, brave and ruthless people, people like him don't say anything cruel, and it's better not to provoke them if they directly drain the blood of the enemy without saying a word. When it was time to start working later, the Death Eaters were again amazed at the ruthlessness of this colleague. Whether it was the Aurors of the British Ministry of Magic or the Muggles, he was happy to torture his opponents before killing them slowly. Especially the Muggles. None of the Muggles that fell into his hands were whole in the end. Relying on this cruel and ferocious energy, the name of Heinsofulo began to spread among the Death Eaters, and his name reached Voldemort directly, becoming the first foreign dark wizard received by Voldemort. Heinsofulo, who is maintaining the wand, recalled his past in his mind at this time. He was born in a village near Bonn, Germany, the only child in his family. Since he was a child, he found that his family seemed out of place with the whole village. Except for necessary conversations, neither his parents nor his grandfather would communicate with the neighbors. This led to a thick gap between Hein and his peers in the village. Except for the little girl from the neighbor's house, Marlene, the daily life of the other children in the village is to eat, sleep, and play Hein. Since he was 6 years old, Hein was either stoned or beaten black and blue by a group of people 5 days a week. However, many children slowly discovered that no matter how many injuries Hein suffered the day before, the injuries on his body always disappeared the next day. So the pairs used the word monster instead of Hein, and whenever he stepped out of the house, he was attacked with stones. And every time Hein was injured by a stone, the neighbor's Marlene would always wipe his wound clean with her own handkerchief. All the turning points came when he was 11 years old in the summer. An owl sent him an admission letter from Durmstrang School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. On the day he left for Durmstrang, when he came out of the house, Marlene rushed to hug him and said she would wait for him to come back. After coming into contact with the magical world, Hein indulged in the joy brought by the magical power. However, some thoughts could not help appearing in his mind. Since wizards are so powerful, why should we hide? Since grandpa and parents have such a strong power, why didn't they teach those bullies that they are human when they are being bullied? After obtaining the principal's permission, Hein, who was addicted to magic power, didn't even return home during the holidays, and studied all kinds of magic he was interested in Durmstrang. However, when he was 14 years old, bad news came that his grandfather's life was coming to an end. Before his death, his grandfather told him that he would take revenge on himself when he was an adult, which was the rule of his family. On the day of his grandfather's death, Hein found an old notebook under his grandfather's pillow. When he opened the notebook, he found that it contained his grandfather's diary when he was young. Hein learned from the diary that his grandfather was a member of Grindelwald's command back then, and had fought in Europe with the first generation of the Dark Lord. After Grindelwald failed and fell, he killed a Muggle who was very similar to himself, and then used the charred body of the Muggle to pretend to be on the scene and abscond. After escaping from the Ministry of Magic, he found a family of ordinary people whose son had died on the battlefield. After modifying their memories, he became a distant relative of the family who had fled from the east, and then he married the daughter of the family, and then settled down like this. Hein, who studied in Durmstrang, naturally knew about Grindelwald's existence, He has passed by Grindelwald's sign every day over the years. Just talking about Grindelwald is a taboo in Durmstrang. In Grandpa's diary, he knew for the first time the Dark Lord's plan of action. Overturning the international statute of secrecy and establishing a benevolent new global order led by wise and powerful wizards and wizards is naturally more in line with the young man's appetite than the school's requirement of hide and don't use magic in front of muggles. Coupled with his childhood encounters, he developed hatred for those muggles in his heart. As he grew older, Hein became more and more accepting of Grindelwald's proposals. When he graduated, he even made a plan to go to Nurmengard. Just when he was about to act, he suddenly received the news that when the muggles in the village were celebrating the German team winning the 1990 World Cup, the loud noises disturbed Hein's father. Hein's father wounded a muggle with magic, and he was killed by an Auror from the German Ministry of Magic while resisting arrest. A month later, an Auror involved in the arrest of Hein's father was ambushed by a wizard. When the German Aurors found the victim, the dead Auror almost became mincemeat. Not only did Hein not feel any discomfort when he killed someone for the first time, but he also felt an unparalleled sense of joy. In the days that followed, Hein started his road to revenge. First, he participated in the arrest of his father's Auror, and then he bullied his neighbors when he was a child. One after another, enemies and their relatives fell in front of his wand. The wailing and begging for mercy of the victim before his death gave him unprecedented satisfaction. Until the end, his wand pointed at the girl next door, Marlene. "I've been waiting for you to come back," I thought. Marlene, who leaned against the wall and supported her body, cried. Her parents were already lying in a pool of blood. "I've had enough of you. If it wasn't for you, Kimberly wouldn't have ignored me." Hein's memory came to the summer when he was 10 years old. He was chased by several people and had nowhere to escape. When he was blocked on the stone bridge of the small river, he jumped into the small river without hesitation. The children chasing him scattered, and he swam to the bank and got out of the water, and then saw a flowery smile on the bank of the river. "What game are you playing?" The blonde girl with a pretty smile stretched out her hand and pulled him ashore. Hein stared blankly at the unbelievably beautiful girl in front of him, and was speechless for a moment. Hein saw the girl look around, and said to him quietly, "Don't tell others about the next thing." Hein hadn't reacted yet, but in the next second, after he heard the girl say some strange words, his wet clothes became completely dry in an instant. "Are you the elf in the river?" Hein asked in surprise. "I actually said the same person as you," Kimberly said to him with a smile. In the following time, Hein and Kimberly sat on the grass by the river under the bridge, and Kimberly told Hein why his injuries healed so quickly. "Because you are a wizard," Kimberly said. "You will receive an admission letter from the magic school next year." It was a wonderful afternoon, and Hein kept praying in his heart that the sun would never set. The two chatted happily until Marlene's arrival, and Kimberly left under Hein's reluctant eyes. Hein learned from Marlene that Kimberly was the granddaughter of a certain family in the village, and she came to England with her parents for vacation this summer. Hein, who returned home, was distraught, thinking about how to go to Kimberly to play with him the next day. It was that day, after Hein asked, the family members told him about the magical world. It's just that in the following days, Marlene followed Hein every day, so that every time Kimberly met Hein, she said hello and left. Kimberly left until the end of the summer vacation. Following a flash of light from Hein's wand, Marlene's body weighing more than 200 kilograms fell to the ground. Hein, who had finished maintaining his wand, stopped recalling, and then put away the potion. Ever since Mr. Snape used legilimency on him during the Death Eaters job interview that day in order to prevent undercover agents from infiltrating the Death Eaters, and it reminded him of this memory, he always thinks about it recently, the bits and pieces of getting along with Kimberly. With Dumbledore in the past, dark wizards like them dared not set foot in England. Now that Hein came to England, apart from not having Dumbledore's threats and agreeing with Voldemort's ideas, he still had the desire to find Kimberly. During the interview that day, he was still afraid that Mr. Snape would refuse him to join the Death Eaters because of this reason, but Mr. Snape was silent for a long time, patted him on the shoulder, and then let him pass the interview. "Listen up, everyone, now head to Hogsmeade 10 kilometers south of Hogsmeade together. We must take down Hogsmeade today." Karkaroff's head emerging from the fireplace shouted orders to the Death Eaters in the house, interrupting Hinsifulro's thoughts at the same time. Chapter 483 True and False, False and True. Zhang Su learned about the second siege against Hogsmeade by the Death Eaters from Wales. They were chatting in the coffee shop of the Rockwell Hotel at that time, Continuing to discuss the topic of last night, then Wales' cell phone rang, and on the other end of the phone came the news that a large number of Death Eaters had assembled outside Hogsmeade. As for Zhang's guarantee with a tiny camera he quietly installed in the corner of the room last night, he really didn't do anything. This story started when Zhang was kicked down the mountain by Professor McGonagall last night. Although Zhang cannot be killed from a height of 200 meters, it does not prevent him from deliberately falling a little harder so that the principal can vent his anger. So Zhang, who rolled a few times at the foot of the mountain, left the park covered in dirt and grass clippings. After Zhang Su returned to the hotel room, he took a comfortable bath, then turned on his laptop, planning to play a game of Theme Hospital, which was only released in March this year, before going to bed. 199,729,712. It's just the current situation. On the one hand, Hogwarts can't use computers, and Voldemort is making troubles, so he can't play these games in the first place. From this point of view, Voldemort must die. Mr. Zhang had just built a consulting room, and when he pressed the button to start business, there was a knock on the door in the room. With a wave of Zhang Su's hand, the door of the room opened, and Welsh walked in, who had changed her clothes compared to the afternoon, especially her eye patch, which was replaced with a funny face pattern. "It's so late, what's the matter?" Zhang Su asked while choosing a cleaner. Welsh closed the door and locked it, took off his coat and hung it on the coat rack, came behind Zhang Su, watched him place the radiator with great interest, and said, "I'll do it tonight. Live here with you." Zhang Su put the radiator in the middle of the ward with a shake of his hand, and said, "What the hell are you really trying to seduce me?" Alice Welsh, who was lying on the bed, sighed and said, "The idiots in the office have been urging me, asking me to get some useful information from you quickly." "So you came to my place overnight?" Zhang Su asked. "This shows that my attitude is correct. I am full of enthusiasm for work, and I don't have the slightest dissatisfaction with those idiots," Wales said solemnly. "Then you can sleep on the bed tonight, and I will sleep on the floor later," Zhang Su said while hitting the mouse. "If you are hungry, take the snacks on the bedside table, and if you are bored, take the book on the bedside table. You can also read it, if you can understand the words inside." For the next time, the two people in the room stopped talking, except for the voice from the computer. "Please don't die in the corridor," only the sound of the sea waves outside the window. After clearing the game, saving the game and exiting the game, Zhang Su turned his head and saw Wales laying on the bed, looking at him as if watching something interesting. "Come and talk to me." Welsh patted the side of the bed and said. Zhang Su ignored her, but took out a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses, put them on the coffee table, and poured 2 glasses of wine. "Come over and have a drink," Zhang Su said to Wales, holding up his glass. Wales got off the bed, sat on the sofa beside the tea table, picked up the wine glass and had a touch with Zhang Su. "Am I really that unattractive to you?" Wales said deflatedly. "It is because you are so attractive that I have to take it seriously," Zhang Su said after putting down his glass, "because your status is too special." "That's right, we are the kind of people who can't trust each other easily," Welsh said gloomily, "so I didn't expect to really get anything valuable from you personally." Zhang Su raised his wine glass, and the two touched one more. "Everyone knows how to do intelligence. Everyone in this industry is cooperative and cautious. Therefore, Zhang Su and the 4 of them have always kept a certain distance. Only ginger and fish cakes can bring him a little warmth in the place where this routine is flying all over the sky." "Then why did you take this task?" Zhang Su asked curiously, "and you told me in advance." "You believe me when I say what?" Wales asked. "I'll just trust you once," Zhang Su said. Welsh poured wine for himself and Zhang Su, touched one and said, "I will resign after this battle. My savings can buy a ranch in Australia or New Zealand, and I will go there to retire there." "Why, did you suffer any serious injuries?" Zhang Su asked in surprise. Zhang Su never asked her how she lost one eye, so he thought she suffered some serious injury while losing her eye. Otherwise, how could a person who is only about 30 years old speak such dull words? "I envy the 3 of them very much, although I sit higher than all 3 of them," Welsh said while looking at the wine in his hand, "because the 3 of them have their own families behind them. Protect them. In the 2nd year of my employment, my father died in Africa, and my mother died of illness not long after. I work alone in the ministry. I have been working hard and striving for perfection. I have lost my eyes all the time, but do you know what they think of me?" Wales pointed to his towering chest, and continued to say lightly, They spend more time staring at me than at my work performance. All kinds of explicit hints are no less than the tasks I have received. Some time ago only then did I realize that I was promoted so quickly because someone wanted to transfer me to his side as a secretary. You know what that means, right? Do you want to see it? Wales asked Zhang Su, ready to lift up his upper body clothes. Don't, Zhang Su hurriedly stopped. Am I the kind of person who forces the other party to do things they don't like? I'm not forced this time. Welsh, who took off his shirt, said, it's better to take advantage of you than to take advantage of those old men. Zhang Su was speechless, and took the quilt from the bed and covered her with it. He knows that the British intelligence agency has revealed some unreliable things from time to time. For example, in 2003 in Zhang Su's last life, he reneged on his promise to an undercover agent about houses, cars, and tickets, which led to the undercover agent exposing British intelligence. The department has been lurking in the Irish Republican Army for 25 years, and the #1 British spy Fredis Kapadik, who is officially the top leader of the Department of Military Operations. Looking at what happened to the person in front of him, it seems that the British intelligence service here is sometimes unreliable. And she didn't have any excitement when discussing this matter. It seemed that her heart was dead. If someone Zhang used the beauty trick at this time, maybe he would be able to develop the co-spy. However, Zhang Su gave up this idea. It is not the practice of our party's intelligence department to seduce people with Israel. Thank you, Wales said in a low voice after tightening the quilt around his body. She knew that if what she just said spread out, her only choice would be to die in an accident. At this time, Zhang Su's deepest thought was whether what she said was true. After all, he had shopped a lot in his previous life, and read a lot of stories of this level. He also anonymously made up a few ups and down stories, and it didn't take long for him to get thousands of likes. However, the real incident he told has a lot of people criticizing him. Her story sounds harmless, a common unspoken rule in the workplace, but because of the location and characters, some doubts are still necessary. Now Mr. Zhang is not a small shrimp, and he still has the value of being willing to be a wife in order to catch the gangster. So now he has no choice but to follow the other party's path first, to see if the other party really thinks so. As long as nothing happens, everything is fine. Although he is young, he can still persevere in the face of major issues of right and wrong. Then what are your plans next? Zhang Su asked. Let's do this job well first, she said. Cooperate with me and treat it as a vacation for me. By the way, she said after remembering something, you don't know my name yet, do you? Zhang Su nodded. He has always called each other by their code names directly. Kimberly Taylor, she said. Okay, Taylor. Call me Kimberly. Okay, Kimberly. Let's discuss buying a ranch in Australia or New Zealand. Zhang Su said, if you buy a ranch, I don't mind helping you solve the problem of product sales. When talking about farming and animal husbandry, Mr. Zhang immediately regained his spirits. The Farming War Channel and Getting Rich experience for so many years are not in vain. Chapter 484 Hogsmeade Second Anti-Siege Campaign, 1. The north of Hogsmeade is a towering mountain. Standing on the top of the mountain, you can have a panoramic view of Hogsmeade and the surrounding area. If the mountain is good, you can even see Hogwarts Castle and the Great Lake at the same time. When Zhang Su was acting as an acting professor, he often used his privileges to come out on weekends to gather and practice landscape painting in this place, where there are many small mountains at a glance. At this time, such a place where one could have a bird's eye view of the whole situation, naturally, the side defending Hogsmeade would not miss it. So when Zhang came here with his sister parading, he found himself standing behind a front door. Then Zhang Su and Welsh were surrounded by several magic wands and B-31er, 5. The Ministry of Magic and the government army set up a secret observation post here, but Zhang Su broke into other people's defense circle all at once. If they weren't wearing Death Eater uniforms, they would have been set on fire just now. But everyone is their own person, so it's easy to handle. After Wales showed his ID to the second lieutenant in charge of the government army, they lowered their guns. But Mr. Zhang passed the test by swiping his face. Now the northern part of Scotland is quite cold, and the top of the mountain has dropped below zero. Coupled with the north wind from the Arctic Circle, the people who stand guard in this cold place are naturally mainly Aurors who have just started working up, and these Aurors who have just started working for a short time naturally know Zhang. After some communication, Zhang Su agreed to observe the battle here as a Hogwarts observer. This observation post is a bunker built in the top of the mountain, half buried in the ground, with a rock roof above it, and a circle of windows for observation around it from a distance, it will not be found at all. At the same time, the cold north wind is pouring in from the surrounding observation ports, and standing here is not much warmer than being outside. So Zhang Su changed into his Hogwarts robe, and inserted a heating card, thus avoiding the fate of freezing hands and feet. Less than a minute later, Wales found the human-shaped heater beside him, and naturally posted it. Climbing up and looking far, from the binoculars, you can see that a lot of Death Eaters have gathered in the open space south of Hogsmeade, and it can be seen that they are organizing their teams. If you put in an IS-90 self-propelled artillery company for extreme rapid fire now, we can have lunch with peace of mind. Zhang Su said to the government soldiers wearing SAS armbands not far away. The soldiers who were reporting the situation of the Death Eaters to the headquarters did not have the chance to Zhang Su. Instead, Welsh, who was sticking to his side to keep warm, said, "According to the latest agreement, we cannot use thermal weapons on a large scale at present." Zhang Su looked at Wales in surprise, and asked, "Why don't you use a method that can greatly reduce casualties?" "I'll talk to you again tonight," Wales said to Zhang Su softly. At this moment, Zhang Su felt a few eyes of jealousy and envy falling on him. Zhang Su with black hair almost stretched out his hand to pinch her to retaliate. It's not necessary to make people pass the word and report to the superiors, right? Period. At this time, the first batch of Death Eaters from the foot of the mountain had already started to head towards Hogsmeade. Their task was to destroy and interfere with Hogsmeade's defensive magic. An important defensive magic system can be the flower of magic in the magic world, and it is one of the signs of a country's level of magic. Unlike applying magic to an item, the defensive magic of an area is mainly composed of several magic power nodes. Through the regular flow of magic power in each node, the magic power forms a magical effect. An NBSP, in the Oriental magic system, such magic nodes are formation eyes, and defensive magic can be said to be various formations. In this regard, the basic principles of formations and area defense magic in the East and the West are similar, but the development direction of the technology tree climbed on this basis is different. The defense of key points does not rely on a single defensive magic, but multiple defensive magics work together to achieve the purpose of defending against the enemy. In this way, the mutual interference between defensive magic has become the biggest problem in building a defense system. Just like the electronic equipment on a modern battleship interferes with each other, the more powerful and sophisticated a defensive magic, the stronger the interference between them. If this problem is not handled well, the defense magic will be reduced in power or even expire due to mutual interference, or it will explode directly. Therefore, to solve the problem of interference between multiple defensive magics, one must have extremely profound knowledge of magic, and must have an extremely in-depth study of the defensive magics used. Fortunately, Dumbledore was still alive when he arranged Hogsmeade's defensive magic system. Thanks to his efforts, Hogsmeade was not broken by the Death Eaters led by Voldemort during the first counter-siege. To break through the defensive magic, the available method is to use a large force or a large number of magic spells to attack it, so that the magic power of the defensive magic is exhausted or it collapses due to short-term local overload, or directly find the location of the magic power node, and then carry out destruction. If the magic level is advanced, you can sense the magic flow of defensive magic on the spot, and then use your own magic power to interfere with the magic flow of defensive magic, just like shorting a certain place on the circuit board, a key position on the circuit board. If something goes wrong, the board is useless. The task of the first group of people sent by the Death Eaters was to decipher Hogsmeade's defensive magic. They either launched an attack to find out the type of defensive magic, or looked for ways to interfere and destroy the defensive magic. The depth of Hogsmeade's defensive magic is not small, far beyond the range of ordinary spells. Moreover, the Aurors guarding Hogsmeade didn't watch the Death Eaters break the defensive magic there. From the observation post, it could be seen that teams of Aurors had already gathered at the edge of the village under the cover of houses, getting ready to launch a counterattack. Huh? Zhang Su, who observed an unexpected situation, let out a cry of surprise. He saw several spells shot out from the house on the edge of Hogsmeade, and then accurately hit the target several times beyond the range of ordinary wizard spells. Death Eaters, and the Death Eaters who were hit by those spells immediately fell to the ground and died. In the next few minutes, ultra-long-range spells were shot out continuously in the house. Although the interval between these spells was much longer than normal, many Death Eaters still fell under these spells. Period. Just when this group of Death Eaters wavered, the assembled Aurors charged at the Death Eaters. Zhang Su thought of a report he had read before, then stretched his head aside, and asked softly in Welsh's ear, "This is your magic sniper?" Wales nodded, but she accidentally let her ear touch Zhang Su's mouth. Zhang Su just wanted to tease her, but he stood up suddenly and listened for a while with his ears sideways. Someone came up from behind, about 10 people. Are they friendly or enemy? Zhang Su asked the Aurors and government soldiers beside him. In order to survive on the battlefield, it is necessary to see all directions and listen to all directions. Just now Zhang Su gave himself a fun ear at the beginning, so he immediately discovered the sound of footsteps climbing on the hillside behind. It's the enemy. After confirming with the headquarters that no reinforcements were sent, the communications soldier in the observation post said. Chapter 485 Hogsmeade's Second Anti-Siege Campaign, 2. Unlike the hastily organized first siege against Hogsmeade, the Death Eaters had clearly come prepared this time. Therefore, the Death Eaters would not let go of those hills in the north of Hogsmeade where they could see the whole situation. In terms of opening maps, wizards and muggles have a consensus. It's just that there are so many hills here, and the Ministry of Magic can't arrange personnel to station them all. Except for a few observation posts, the other hills are empty. However, today the Death Eaters also happened to choose the hill where this observation post was located. Zhang Su looked at the people inside the observation post. There were 3 cute new Aurors, 3 Muggle SAS members, plus him and Welsh, a total of 8 people. At present, there are at least 10 known Death Eaters who are about to come, and it is estimated that the opponent's individual combat ability is not weak because the person who came up to open the map had a great chance to be the commander-in-chief of this operation, and the Death Eaters who followed to protect the commander were naturally not weak hands. The most troublesome thing for Zhang Su is that the 8 people here belong to the 4 departments of the Ministry of Magic, the government military, the intelligence department, and the people who eat melons. This is an extremely troublesome matter. After all parties have reasons for not obeying other people's orders, and reasons for letting others obey their own orders. In such cases it is easy to pill. So Zhang Su could only look at the familiar Auror beside him, and asked, "How are you going to deal with this situation? If there are not many people on the other side, we will eliminate them. If there are too many people, then retreat after a little resistance." The Auror replied. Zhang Su heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that he was going to run away. He thought they were going to fight to the end on the hill in terms of running. Zhang, thinks he is not defeated by others. "Okay, you guys act according to your own plan." Zhang Su said to them, "I'll leave some gifts for them in retreat." The people inside the original observation post walked to the other side one after another, preparing to surprise the Death Eaters who had climbed up. Zhang Su took out his wand and began to dig a hole in the ground. "What are you going to do?" Wales asked on the side. Zhang Su didn't answer, and asked, "Have you heard of machines in Belgium?" Wales didn't react. Instead, a SAS soldier shook his head, and then he turned around and said, "Are you going to blow up this mountain, sir?" Charles Harrington, Chief of Staff of the British Second Army during the First World War, said to reporters that, "Gentlemen, we may not leave history, but we will definitely change geography. It is quite famous the British Army dug nearly 40 holes under the German positions, and then buried explosives ranging from 9 tons to more than 3 tons. After these explosives detonated, 100 German troops died on the spot, and the 21st Royal Bavarian Division was almost wiped out. The explosion at that time left a large number of deep pits more than, 2, feet wide, and some deep pits have been preserved into the, street century. So this soldier who knows this period of history is shaking a little now. If they fight in the front, the rear will blow up, and he will be buried directly on the spot. It's not that exaggerated." Zhang Su said while digging a hole, "I'm just making an analogy. Besides, how could I carry tons of explosives with me?" Then Zhang Su began to put some things into the pit that was half a meter wide and more than 1 meter deep, which made Welsh's teeth ache when he saw it. "Don't worry, I would use these things for something other than fighting Death Eaters," Zhang Su said to Wales while installing the timing detonator. "Ordinary Death Eaters will not come here at this time, so there may be important targets among this group of Death Eaters. Then try to fry it, maybe there will be some unexpected gains." Speaking of this, Zhang Su felt a pity in his heart. Many years ago, when Voldemort lived in Malfoy's house, he made a plan to dig a tunnel under their house and plant explosives, so that Voldemort could take an earthen plane. You can kill a large number of Death Eaters without killing Voldemort as a result, The plan couldn't keep up with the change. Before that, their house was burned down, and now Voldemort's office has gone to nowhere. Zhang Su installed 2 detonators in this pile of gifts, one is timed detonation and the other is mechanical. If these explosives are fired, the fuse on the detonator will be activated. After Zhang Su filled the hole and camouflaged it, the sound of several front-warding explosions sounded in the open space outside, and then all the people in the observation post rushed out. "Where do we go next?" Wales asked. Zhang Su glanced in the direction of the Forbidden Forest, then stretched out his hand to Wales, and said, "Let's go to the Forbidden Forest, I'm a little worried about it." In this kind of big scene, the unplanned Zhang Su and the others don't play a big role, and it might be a disservice, so Zhang Su plans to look around first. For Zhang Su, it is most important to understand the current situation and the strength of both sides. As for Hogwarts, Zhang Su was not too worried. As long as the news that Harry was hiding there was not leaked and Voldemort did not go there in person, then the problem would be fine. After the sound of BIU, Zhang Su and the others appeared on a piece of grass in the Forbidden Forest. "Have you been here before?" Zhang Su asked. "A few times," Wales replied. "Have you dealt with the Centaur tribe?" Zhang Su continued to ask as he led her forward. "No, we all avoided them from a distance." Welsh said, "Let's go find the Centaur now." "That's right," Zhang Su said, "the prophecy of the horse people shows that they will also be involved in this war, so they started preparing for the war very early. Now I'm going there to see if there's anything that can help. Got to be busy." Zhang Su then told her, "Be careful when communicating with the horse people, don't show curiosity and contempt, don't treat them as animals, and treat them as human beings like yourself." Just when they were not far from the Centaur tribe, a low and short horn sounded suddenly. Zhang Su was shocked and said, "No, this is the signal for the horsemen to start fighting. Are we going to help now?" Wales asked. "Let's take a look outside first to find out the size of the enemy, and then decide whether to help directly or seek reinforcements." Zhang Su took out a flying sword after finishing speaking. After casting the disillusionment curse, the invisible two came to the sky near the Centaur tribe. At this time, a group of Death Eaters gathered in front of the gate of the Centaur tribe. They obviously had no intention of peacefully coexisting with the Centaur. At this moment, under the cover of several earth giants transformed by the transformation technique, they braved the Centaur to shoot out. The rain of arrows launched an attack on the village of the Centaur. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 486, Hogsmeade's Second Anti-Siege Campaign, 3. In the Centaur tribe in the Forbidden Forest, the Centaur relied on the thick wooden wall to continuously pour a dense rain of arrows on the attacking wizards outside. Although some Death Eaters came up with a method of using clay figures in front of shields to block arrows, they still leaked a lot of loopholes due to their lack of experience in cooperating with mutants, and soon some Death Eaters were pierced through the clay figures. Arrows in the space between. At this time, Zhang Su and Welsh, who were already invisible, stepped on the flying swords and stayed at the height of the treetops not far from the battlefield, carefully observing the situation below. Wales, who used the flying sword for the first time, felt that his feet were trembling a little. Stepping on a flying sword that was not as wide as his feet, the feeling that his feet would slip and fall off at any time was really bad. Flying swords with railings are for sale, but they are for families traveling with children, so I didn't buy them. Zhang Su said so. Wales was dubious. She was not sure if Zhang Su said so to make herself hug him from behind. It was the first time she had such intimate contact with an adult animal of the opposite sex after she became an adult. In order to distract her attention from her feet and the squeezed parts, she had to concentrate all her energy on observing the battlefield below. Soon, she discovered something interesting. The arrows with black arrowheads used by the horsemen don't react when they fall on the ground, but they catch fire when they hide a wizard or a clay man. Welsh said softly to Zhang Su. On the battlefield, a well-built centaur took out an arrow of what Welsh called a black arrow, aimed it and shot it at the knee of the clay man who was already very close to the wooden wall. When the arrow pierced into the clay man's knee, a burst of flames burst out from where the arrow hit, and the overwhelmed clay man immediately fell under the wooden wall. The Death Eaters behind the clay figure had no cover, and the surrounding horsemen immediately switched to arrows with black arrows, and shot at the exposed Death Eaters. The Death Eater who rushed to the front had obviously put on a spell, such as the Iron Armor Curse. A centaur who did not change the arrow, but still used a stone arrow, shot an arrow at the Death Eater before changing the arrow. And the arrow hit the Death Eater's chest, but there was a flash of light on his body, and the arrow bounced off as if it had been shot on a steel plate. In the next moment, 3 black arrows flew towards the Death Eater. The moment the first black arrow hit his protective layer of the Iron Armor Curse, the arrow flashed red, and then a large group of bright flames burst out, and the protective layer visible to the naked eye on his body flashed and disappeared. The next moment, a second black arrow pierced his shoulder, and after a boom ball of fire, there was no more. The third arrow flew past a place where his head was originally, crossed the half of his torso and stuck to the ground behind him. Nothing happened, just like an ordinary arrow. This tragic scene made Wales feel a little uncomfortable, and her arms around Zhang Su's waist became tighter. "It's a strange kind of arrow they use. Do you know why?" Wales asked. After observing for a while, she discovered the characteristics of this arrow. When they hide a magical target, be it a magical creation, a wizard, or a spell, these arrows burst into extremely hot flames. It's nothing strange. The black arrows they use are special anti-magic arrows. Zhang Su replied, "Under certain conditions, these arrows can exert great power." "Is this the technology of the centaurs?" Wales asked in surprise. "In this way, the deterrent effect of wizards in front of them will be lower. This kind of arrow is considered to be my support for them." Zhang Su replied, "I will talk to you tonight." This arrow is Zhang Su. During the college entrance examination review period, he spent 2 lunch breaks tinkering with the gizmo. It belongs to the product of studying the runes given to him by Professor Babbling in his spare time, from getting started to giving up. This arrow is actually very simple. It uses obsidian with suitable hardness, price and magic effect as the carrier, engraves specific runes on it, digs a hole from the end and plugs it with magnesium heat. Its working principle is that when the obsidian touches the magic power, due to its extremely low magic resistance, part of the magic power will pass through it, and when the magic power flows through it, the upper rune will be triggered to produce a magic effect, and then the inside will add a small amount of ferrite will explode and burn under the action of runes. As for the runes that are the core technology of the arrow, after being translated, they are Includestria using Naspace STD, Imtan, Chara 666, Coot. So while applying for a patent, he contacted Lao Deng, who was still alive at the time, and asked him to see if this kind of arrow was suitable for horse people. During the period, the troops who got the news thought that this arrow was very good, suitable for the troops to use in some special occasions, and this idea can also be used on bullets, so they bought this patent. Later, Lao Deng thought that this thing would help improve the combat effectiveness of the horse people, and the horse people are allies, so it was very suitable for them to use. So Zhang Su contacted the army to ask if they could produce a batch and send it to the UK to test the effect. The relevant departments of the army who want to obtain actual combat effects think that it is not bad to let the British side try it first. It is a common practice to sell new weapons in warring areas as a test. Ever since, the Death Eaters who are now attacking the Centaur tribe are sad. These black arrows mixed in the rain of normal arrows can be said to have pierced armor with 1 arrow and killed with 2 arrows. In a short time, many Death Eaters have turned into torches, and their fate was terrible. Welsh saw that the battle situation below was beginning to lean towards the centaur, so he said, "It seems that there is nothing to worry about here." "It's hard to say." Zhang Su frowned and said, "Although the horsemen temporarily gain the upper hand by relying on these arrows, if they can't seize the opportunity to expand their advantage, it's hard to say what insidious magic those Death Eaters will use. The horsemen in the Forbidden Forest are still very good in combat and command. They fought undefeated for decades against those big spiders that were explosive soldiers and only predators in the Forbidden Forest. After Zhang Su burned down the house of the big spiders, they were able to strangle those big spiders in a short time exhausted. This is enough to show their combat level. The biggest disadvantage of the centaurs is that they don't know magic. When dealing with wizards with many tricks, they often suffer losses if they can only resist. When the Death Eaters approached the wooden wall, several centaurs had already been hit by the curse, and then others were dragged down. The current situation seems to be that the horse people are blocked behind the tribe's wooden wall and cannot come out. Who let their village have only 1 door? Otherwise, with their mobility in the Forbidden Forest, it would be difficult for the wizard's spell to hit the centaur running under the cover of trees. Just when Zhang Su was about to go down to help, a large cloud of dark green mist appeared in the upwind position of the Centaur tribe, and while it was expanding, it swept towards the Centaur with the help of the wind. Chapter 487 Hogsmeade's Second Anti-Siege Campaign, 4. Let's go down. As soon as Zhang Su finished speaking, he immediately urged the flying sword to fly towards the central square of the Centaur tribe. At this time, such a large green mist must not be a good thing. This thing made by the Death Eaters is definitely not used to nourish the yin, tonify the kidneys, remove acne, whiten, slim, prevent hair loss and remove fleas for the horsemen. Elder, don't shoot the arrow, it's me. As soon as Zhang Su appeared and landed, he was aimed at by the horsemen in the square with bows and arrows. The elder who had just arranged for the horse people in the north of the village to take refuge was overjoyed when he saw Zhang Su's arrival, and said, "That's great, you came just after I asked Hogwarts for help." At this time, the green poisonous mist had drifted to a place not far from the village wall, and the Centaur soldiers stationed here were going door to door to check whether there were any Centaur inside the house and had not evacuated. Fortunately, the wind in the Forbidden Forest is not as strong as it is on the top of the mountain because of the obstruction of the trees, otherwise the poisonous fog has already entered the village. And those Death Eaters had already retreated, and they were ready to intercept the Centaur's breakout in the downwind direction. "Let's not talk about other things now," Zhang Su said to the Centaur elder while taking out his staff that had not been used for a long time. "I want to blow back the poisonous mist to protect me from being disturbed for a minute." While Zhang Su was making preparations, the Centaur elders immediately ordered the Centaur in the square to form a circle to protect Zhang Su. Welsh also stood not far behind him, watching out for movements around and above. The area of the horsemen village was not small, and Zhang Su couldn't create a strong wind that could cover the entire village with his own strength if there is enough time. He can also arrange a whirlwind array that affects the entire village, but now the poisonous mist is about to touch the wooden wall by the village. With Zhang Su's strength, if he does it himself, he can blow away the poisonous mist the size of half a football field with all his strength. However, the mana used to create a strong wind with spells is directly proportional to the volume and speed of the flowing air created, so ordinary people need the help of external forces to create a strong wind that covers the entire village. The mobilization of these external mana has very high requirements on the caster. The difference between using one's own mana and relying on external forces like driving a Lizhao Wuling racing car and driving a modified truck with an overload of 140 tons. Period. Think back to once a huge lion built the 7-star altar and gathered the strength of all the people to create a wind, which can be called an unprecedented move. His ability and talent to mobilize and control massive amounts of mana is beyond the reach of future generations. So what Zhang Su has to do now is to connect a bunch of mana chargers to himself, and then concentrate on controlling these spells to create a headwind to blow the poisonous mist back. After placing 9 not small pieces of jade on the ground, Zhang Su began to link mana to cast spells when their wind is blowing and the clouds are flying. All of a sudden, a gust of wind roared in, hitting the green poisonous mist that had just passed the wooden wall, and then the poisonous mist was swept away by the sudden strong wind. Dividing line. When the operation started today, Snape was assigned a task that was not easy to handle, which was to lead people to attack the Centaur tribe in the Forbidden Forest when Hogsmeade couldn't find any manpower, and to kill the Centaur tribe here. After human beings, all their corpses were made into ghost corpses. Snape has taught at Hogwarts for many years, so he naturally understands the strength of the Centaur tribe in the Forbidden Forest, and he also learned that shortly before Dumbledore's death, Old Deng sent something that should be a weapon to the Centaur tribe there. As a representative of high IQ among Death Eaters, Snape naturally would not choose to launch a strong attack on the Centaur tribe. Snape clearly knew that the Centaur who took advantage of the terrain in the Forbidden Forest could fight the Death Eaters, but the Centaur could not use magic, and their weapons were nothing but cold weapons for hand-to-hand combat except bows and arrows. "What should we do, Mr. Snape?" Farrell asked. Farrell was a student of the Hogwarts Snake School who graduated last year. He came from an old pharmaceutical family, so he had a good relationship with Snape when he was in school. He led the establishment of the Hogwarts Apothecary Association. After graduating, he heard the speech of the Minister of Magic, Mr. Malfoy, and he responded to the call of the pure-blood wizard and joined the ranks of the Death Eaters. After joining the ranks of the Death Eaters, he was assigned as an assistant to Snape's staff. By the way, after Hogwarts graduates joined the ranks of Death Eaters in recent years, they were all divided up by Snape and the old horse. What would you do if it were you? Snape asked rhetorically. According to SWOT analysis, Snape stopped Farinal from dropping the book bag. Just tell me the result. The Centaur's advantage is their mobility in the Forbidden Forest. We need to confine them to one place to offset their advantage, Farinal said. And the Centaur can't use magic. We should prepare mass destruction magic to wipe out their vitality. Very good, Snape nodded, and at the same time handed him a piece of parchment. You prepare these things before you go. When Snape brought people to the vicinity of the Horse Tribe in the Forbidden Forest, he began to arrange the actions of his Death Eaters. Apart from arranging some people to attack outside the gate of the Centaur village on the downwind side in order to block the gate and attract the Centaur people, Snape took most of the people to hide in the upwind side, preparing to wait for the poisonous fog he configured on the spot to float into the Centaur village. After the village, they followed behind the poisonous fog and attacked the village. Snape and the other Death Eaters got the beginning right, but not the ending. Although the casualties of those who launched a feint attack at the beginning were not small, they also attracted the attention of the horsemen to that side. However, just as Snape's specially made poisonous mist drifted into the wall of the Centaur village, the wind direction suddenly turned 180 degrees. Seeing the green poisonous mist sweeping towards them, the Death Eaters ran away one after another. Facing the poisonous mist blown back by the strong wind that exceeded the running speed of humans, many unlucky people who had not had time to escape and cast protective spells on themselves turned green and died after inhaling the poisonous mist. Separation line: today's wind direction is mainly from the north. If he doesn't want the poisonous fog blown away by his own wind to be blown back by the wind, Zhang Su has to find a way to get rid of the poisonous fog. Zhang Su mobilized the last bit of magic power, controlled the wind that engulfed the poisonous mist to gather all the poisonous mist together, and then packed it into a wind dragon, and then he controlled the wind dragon to follow the north wind down the air outlet. The Death Eaters blocking the door flew away. Just when this poisonous wind dragon was about to give those Death Eaters a big surprise, there was a loud bang in the distance, which scared Zhang Su, who was concentrating on controlling the spell, and the spell got out of control. The wind dragon that just flew out of the village exploded on the spot, and then the green poisonous mist drifted towards the Death Eaters, who blocked the door at the downwind vent as originally planned. Now those Death Eaters also panicked and fled from the place where the poisonous fog was about to envelop. Seeing that the Death Eaters were in a mess, the Centaur Elder immediately ordered all the Centaur fighters to attack immediately and launch a counterattack against the Death Eaters. And Zhang Su, who is mentally exhausted from controlling a large amount of mana, trembled just now, but almost finished the backlash. Now that the spell was over, he noticed that the other people in his eyes were shaking. At this time, Welsh, who had been guarding beside Zhang Su, stepped forward to support the rickety Zhang Su, and was about to take him to rest nearby, but she didn't find any stools around. Please follow me, both of you, a Centaur girl said after walking in front of Zhang Su and the others. Zhang Su looked up at the person, and said hello. Oh, it's Mew Mew, thank you. Thank you so much today. Mew Mew saluted Zhang Su. Just thinking about it now is still a little dizzy, so I can only nod my head. Mew Mew didn't care, and led Zhang Su and the others to the resting place. When Zhang Su and Welsh followed Twilight to the side of the square, Welsh poked Zhang Su, and asked quietly, "Don't horses wear clothes regardless of gender? This is their custom." Zhang Su replied softly. "Then you said that you often come here to play with the horses?" Welsh continued to ask quietly. "Yes, I come here to be guests from time to time, and sometimes I just have a meal when I catch up with a banquet." Zhang Su nodded and replied. Welsh continued to ask, "The fundamental reason why you came here is not to see them." After Welsh finished speaking, he poked Zhang Su's weakness several times with his fingers. At this time, Scarlet's voice sounded behind the two of them, "Put harder, if this kind of person is stabbed to death, it will be regarded as eliminating harm for the people." Chapter 488 Big Brother, Forget It GIF. Taking advantage of the panic of the Death Eaters blocking the door, the Centaur Elders immediately ordered the soldiers in the village to rush out and use their advantages in mobile warfare to launch a counterattack against the Death Eaters. As an Elder who started as a soldier and then walked to the center step by step, he knew that he had to trust the wisdom and strength of his soldiers. After arranging the battle, he let the frontline fighters play freely and commanded the airdroppers at a higher level. He can't do things like orders. As the supreme ruler of the Horse Tribe, the Elders of the Horse hold the power, military power and divine power of the tribe at the same time. In addition to directing operations, he also needs to arrange for the treatment of the wounded. In the short battle just now, several Centaur warriors were hit by the Death Eater's curse, 2 Centaur warriors died, and several other warriors were also seriously injured. Fortunately, the Centaur is also very knowledgeable in potions. The injured Centaur can at least save his life. As for the disability, sometimes it is unavoidable. After arranging the rescue of the wounded, the Centaur elder walked towards Zhang Su, who was resting on a stool brought by other centaurs beside the square, and he wanted to thank him. Of course, I know my own weakness. In the face of all kinds of weird methods of wizards, the centaur does not have any particularly effective methods, so the centaur elders began to seek it from Hogwarts next door as soon as they discovered the poisonous fog help. Facts have proved that the best way to deal with wizards is to have more powerful wizards on your side. After Zhang Su's arrival, the huge threat faced by the horse tribe was easily resolved. Now the horse tribe owes Zhang Su a great favor. It's just that when the centaur elder walked not far behind Zhang Su, he stopped suddenly. After observing carefully for 2 seconds, he turned and walked towards the warehouse where the weapons were hoarded, muttering to himself as he walked. Words like Dongji and common prosperity and winner in life made his assistants confused. At this time, Zhang Su was sitting on a long wooden chair brought by the horseman, holding a medicine bottle that had just been emptied in his hand. The large-scale casting just now was a bit exhausting for him, so he had to take some medicine to slow down. Scarlet and Wales sat on either side of him. It's just that the atmosphere at the scene, even the elders of the centaur had to avoid 3 points when they saw it. Zhang Su moved towards Scarlet, filling the gap between the two, and at the same time moved a little further away from Wales, who was sticking over from the other side. "Why are you here?" Zhang Su asked Scarlet. Scarlet didn't want to talk to Zhang Su, and then turned her head to the other side. Zhang Su rubbed over a little more, and Scarlet just wanted to move away, but suddenly found that a paw had already hugged her waist from the other side, making her unable to move. "Is Lucy still at Hogwarts?" Zhang Su asked again. It was difficult for him to say Harley's name outside, so he continued to use her alias. Continue to be silent, and at the same time pinch the back of the paw's hand that is hugging her waist, but she doesn't move away anymore. At this time, Zhang Su turned his head and said to Wales on the other side, "I'll go back to Hogwarts first, and I'll contact you later." After Zhang Su finished speaking, he stood up and picked up the broom that Scarlet used when he came over. He got on the broom and flew behind Scarlet. Suddenly, a princess hugged her on the broom. She soared into the sky amidst the roar of wow. "It's nice to be young." The elder who saw this scene through the warehouse door sighed. After a while, a centaur came over. "Elder, the one who stayed said that he is willing to help us protect the tribe." Immediately, the elder thought about it, and he was not sure what new tricks the Death Eaters would play next, so it would be good to have a wizard to help, so he nodded in agreement. Someone was on duty at the gate of the Hogwarts castle, so Scarlet jumped from the sky before the broomstick landed. It is a curse for a prepared wizard to jump from a height of tens of meters. Even a skirt could make the coffin lid of George Kelly, the father of aerodynamics, unable to hold down. After Scarlet landed in front of the castle gate, she walked directly into the castle. After Zhang Su got off the broom, he saw Mad-Eye Moody and Professor Flitwick standing guard by the gate. "I'm back, Professor Flitwick." Zhang Su stepped forward and said to his dean. Professor Flitwick patted Zhang Su's knee and said with relief, "It's good to be back." After greeting Moody, Zhang Su came to the castle. "Professor McGonagall." Zhang Su met the principal in the hall. Professor McGonagall looked at him indifferently, and asked him with a businesslike look, "You are also on the side of the Centaur tribe?" "It happened to catch up, and now your tenant has someone helping there, so we came back," Zhang Su replied. Although Professor McGonagall called back all the professors who could fight at Hogwarts, and those members of the Order of the Phoenix who did not work in the Ministry of Magic also came back to support them, but these people are still too sparsely populated for Hogwarts. Up from Zhang Su's standpoint, he still puts Hogwarts first, so he left Wales alone in the Centaur tribe, and brought Scarlet back by himself. From the standpoint of Wales, I believe she will not miss the opportunity to establish a good relationship with the Centaur tribe. "Is Harry in the castle?" Zhang Su then asked. At this time, Professor McGonagall's expression became strange. "She is in Gryffindor's dormitory." After asking for the password, Zhang Su temporarily bid farewell to Professor McGonagall and went to find Harry. After not coming back for half a year, Zhang Su walked in the castle again, and suddenly felt a sense of right and wrong. After the ghosts and the portraits greeted each other, Zhang Su came to the front of the portrait of the fat lady at the gate of the common room of the Lion Court. Zhang Su raised his head and said to the ceiling, "It turns out that you are here in ambush, Neville." Neville, who was tied up and hung on the ceiling, turned his head away after 2 he likes. After reporting the password to the fat lady, Zhang Su came to Harry's dormitory. "Hey, everyone is here." Zhang Su greeted the trio of Harry and Ginny in the dormitory. "Harry, your face is a little pale, are you anemic?" Seeing that it was Zhang Su who came in, Harry, who had basically recovered after resting for a while, picked up the wand by the bedside, and got out of bed. Seeing that the angry-eyed Harry was about to go mad, Ron hooked Harry from behind with one hand, and held down her wand holding hand with the other. Hermione was in front of Harry, holding down her hand holding the wand at the same time. "Harry, forget it." GIF Chapter 489 Drink more hot water, Harley. Under the comfort of Ron, Hermione and Ginny, Harry finally calmed down and sat back on the bed. But she still didn't let go of the wand in her hand. "You should understand what girls have." Ginny hesitated and explained to Zhang Su the reason why Harley lost his temper. Zhang Su understood in seconds, scratched the back of his head embarrassingly, and then put an iron armor curse on himself. This time it was a joke, no one expected such a thing to happen. Looking at Harry's expression now, it is estimated that the boat of their friendship is about to capsize. So Zhang Su gave up and continued to make some jokes about some academic issues with Harley, and Neville would be a lesson from the past. Drink more hot water these days. It was with great difficulty that Zhang managed to hold back such words to comfort Harley. Harry ignored Zhang Su, then turned his head to the other side. Now Zhang felt a little embarrassed. After all, Harley was not like other girls. If the previous methods of coaxing girls were used on her, it would be self-defeating, so he had to find another way. "Is Dobby here?" Seeing that Harry ignored him, Zhang Su called Dobby. There was a sound of pop, and Dobby appeared in front of everyone. Zhang Su opened his treasure bag and took out some red dates, wolfberry, astragalus, angelica and synopsis that he was going to use when stewing mutton in winter. After handing it to Dobby, he asked him to take these together with chicken and ginger. There was a soup for Harry to drink with Ruth, and Ginny and Hermione could also drink it. Ron, after Dobby left with his things, Zhang Su pulled up a chair and sat down in front of Harry, and then said to the angry Harry, "Hogsmeade is fighting now, wait for the battle. I'm going to take a look when it's over. Do you want to go too? It's not safe." Ron was the first to object. Who would attack a young girl for no reason? Zhang Su looked at Harry and said seriously, "For a long period of time to come, I'm afraid today's battles will be Hogsmeade's daily routine. So I think Hallie should have an intuitive understanding of the current situation. You don't forget, Hallie will be in the vanguard of this war, not hiding in the back corner." The vanguard position mentioned by Zhang Su is not the front line of the battle, but the position on the battlefield of public opinion. Last time, Ma gave an exciting speech when he took office as the pseudo-minister of magic, which immediately touched the heartstrings of many wizards who were dissatisfied with the status quo. However, the government in exile of the Ministry of Magic has not taken any action in public opinion recently, which is very strange. If the government in exile side of the Ministry of Magic stopped doing any exciting behavior, morale on their side would plummet. If people's hearts are scattered, it will be difficult to lead the team. So at this time, Harley, who is the #1 Kanban lady in the anti-Voldemort camp, or should be the #1 star figure, the savior Harry, should stand up without hesitation and become an idol to boost everyone's morale. As far as the current situation is concerned, on the battlefield of public opinion, one Harry can stand up to 5 ministers of magic. It's just that Harley's situation has deviated from what was expected. Although she will be very popular if she debuts now, it will be a bit difficult to win things after the effect of the medicine on her wears off. But first let Harley have a clear understanding of the current situation, and make preparations first, and when she returns to her original state soon, she can be pushed to the front stage as quickly as possible. Ron and the others all set their sights on Harry, and only she could make up her own mind about such matters. After thinking for less than half a minute, Harry nodded heavily. Nodding, but didn't speak, probably she didn't want to meow anymore. "Then you continue to rest, wait for the news from Hogsmeade, let's go there together," Zhang Su said to the 4 of them. In this case, everyone acquiesced to Zhang Su's command, so they agreed with him. After instructing Harry and the others a few words, Zhang Su left the dormitory of the Lion Academy and came to the cafeteria. The cafeteria had resumed the previous arrangement of 4 long tables. Since it was time for lunch, Many professors who came back to defend Hogwarts and members of the Order of the Phoenix came here to wait for the meal. Zhang Su came to the long table in the Eagle Court and sat down next to Scarlet, directly next to her. It just seemed that this guy was still angry. He moved aside, and then turned his head away from looking at Zhang Su. Unlike Harley, Harley is just a friend, and it doesn't matter how you play, and the one in front of her is the mother of the future child. What's the matter? Zhang Su quietly reached out and squeezed Scarlet's hand under the table. Why are you so angry? Scarlet shook off Zhang Su's paw, turned his head, and said coldly to Zhang Su, last night, you really had a good time, and there were two of you. Zhang Su was taken aback. Could it be that Professor McGonagall asked her to go to Arthur's seat with her last night? But thinking about it, if the scene was out of control at that time, the safest way was for Scarlet to show up, beat up Zhang Su and throw him into the sea. But if she doesn't show up and keeps watching, Zhang Su felt a toothache. I had a runny nose on the top of the mountain last night. Zhang Su said, after returning to the hotel, I just chatted with that man about raising sheep and cattle all night. Sometimes it's time to confess. For some things, it's better for Mr. Zhang to be an or. Do you believe it yourself? Scarlet asked. You've read too many stall articles. Zhang Su replied speechlessly. You also know the identity of that person, and she will cause a lot of trouble. And I put a video camera in the room, and you can watch the video when the time comes. How do you know if it's a hacker in disguise? Scarlet snorted and said, and it can be seen that she is attached to you. Zhang Su lay down on the table and said, forget it, I'm tired, so you can say whatever you want, it's still the same sentence, the clearer clears himself. While Scarlet continued to pinch Zhang Su's weakness, he said disdainfully, you think you are very humorous, you are wrong, in my eyes, it is just a poor imitation. Although the people in the cafeteria sat at the long tables of several colleges, they were quite concentrated. After a while, everyone rested until the two who were bickering. Although many people have heard of the abnormal relationship between the two, this is the first time they have seen this situation in public. Then everyone entered the mode of eating melons and watching movies at the same time, except for a certain new professor whose face turned into the same color as his surname, and a certain new principal who gloated at his misfortune. Principal, don't worry about it, Lupin said to Professor McGonagall, it doesn't conform to the Hogwarts school rules. For the conservative Hogwarts, improper teacher-student relationship is a more serious matter. Professor McGonagall said calmly to Lupin, Remus, I'm not unreasonable. They have contributed enough to Hogwarts, and I don't think I need to be too harsh on them in some respects. Lupin also looked at Professor McGonagall with a dazed look on his face. I'm afraid the headmaster has been transferred. Then Professor McGonagall said in a low and inaudible voice, it's right for you to bully Maggie. Chapter 490. Busy after the war. In the Hogwarts cafeteria, the melon eaters watched with great interest the family soap opera that was being staged in front of them. Although Zhang Su quietly cast a soundproof magic, the movements and expressions of the two of them were clearly seen by everyone, as if they were watching a pantomime. Those who passed by among the onlookers knew that the bickering between the two of them was still in the bedside quarrel stage, and as long as they didn't move their wands, it didn't matter, so everyone was happy to watch the show from the sidelines. But just as lunch was about to begin, a sudden accident interrupted the two of them. Just when Scarlet grabbed Zhang Su by the collar and pulled Zhang Su's face in front of her, staring at him viciously and preparing to speak harshly, Peeves, the leader of the Hogwarts headbutting team, suddenly soaring into the sky. After Peeves pushed Zhang's head forward forcefully, amidst the exclamation and booing of the onlookers, he withdrew with a happy laugh. This sudden scene brought the onlookers the talk at today's lunch table, while the two parties were so embarrassed that they only ate and did not speak. After all, as the two of them, it's a little inappropriate to come out in front of the audience. If it wasn't for the shield of Peeves standing in front of them, the headmaster would have taken them both away and punished them. As for your excellency the principal, after a sigh, I will ignore them and just get through the last year. Anyway, Hogwarts is not very strict about the relationship between men and women, and they often turn a blind eye to it, as long as the women don't give birth and the men don't die. Not long after the start of lunchtime, news came from Hogsmeade that the Death Eaters suddenly retreated. Dividing line on the streets of Hogsmeade, where a great battle had just ended, the north wind blew away the mud and dust brought by the explosion and collapse of the hill next to the village, and the faces of passers-by in a hurry had faint smiles. On the street, people carrying the wounded on stretchers passed by from time to time, which brought a trace of sadness to the smiling faces of the people who were happy to drive away the Death Eaters. Around the Pig's Head Bar, which is the temporary headquarters of the Ministry of Magic in exile, several houses where residents live have been requisitioned and transformed into a temporary medical point. Now the place is overcrowded, and many Aurors and government soldiers lying on stretchers were seriously injured, constantly being sent here for treatment. Now Hogsmeade is facing a shortage of medical staff and medicines. Although many doctors from St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries came to Hogsmeade with the Ministry of Magic's government in exile, they were very short-handed in the face of the large number of wounded. The same is true for medicine. The Ministry of Magic has no way to move the medicine warehouse of St. Mungo's Hospital. Now the limited medicine can only be used on the seriously injured. The wounded who were only slightly injured could only sit on the chairs prepared by the roadside, and either wait for the doctor to treat their injuries after treating the seriously wounded, or find potions to treat the wounds themselves. On the side of the road, a pale and trembling Kevin sat on a chair, his left leg resting on another chair. There was a palm-length wound on his left thigh. Although the wound was not deep, the blackened muscles on both sides of the wound, the oozing black blood and the stench all showed the seriousness of the wound. Not to mention, as long as you touch it lightly, the wound will make people feel the piercing pain. However, Kevin, who was injured like this, can only be regarded as a lightly wounded person now, and he is not even qualified to enter the medical point for treatment. He can only wait for treatment or let non-professionals handle it. Belle, Simon, you guys hold Kevin down and don't let him move around, Zhang Su said to Bear Grylls and the others while holding a pair of surgical scissors shining coldly. Zhang Su and the others had injected Kevin with an anesthetic just now, but they still couldn't relieve the pain caused by the wound caused by magic. Fainting chemistry was useless, and then they tried fainting magic and fainting physics, but every time they touched the wound, Kevin would wake up in pain. In desperation, Zhang Su and the others could only use the most primitive method to tie Kevin to a chair and hold him down, so as not to struggle for him. Zhang Su used surgical scissors to cut off the trousers around Kevin's wound, because his trousers were stuck by the blood scab around the wound, and he couldn't proceed to the next step if he didn't deal with it. Because Mr. Zhang's hands were a little raw, when he finished cutting his pants, Kevin, who was biting his beret, was already in a cold sweat with bruised veins. Then he poured another bottle of hydrogen peroxide on the wound, and black foam suddenly appeared from the wound, and even a trace of black smoke came out after the foam burst. After cleaning the wound and removing the piece of trousers stuck to the wound by blood scabs, Kevin was already a little exhausted, and even Belle and Simon, who were holding him down, were sweating profusely. After finishing the wound cleaning in the early stage, Zhang Su picked up a ceramic bottle and handed it to Bear Grylls, saying, "Later, you should give Kevin some medicine. It may hurt during the period. I will hold him down." How much to put? Belle asked after taking the medicine bottle. "Just let the wound look like a normal wound." After Zhang Su finished speaking, he turned into Zhang Panda, and then held Kevin down with his huge paws. Facts have proved that Zhang Su's coping method is correct. After the milky white medicine in the bottle was poured on the wound, it immediately turned black. Kevin also wanted to jump up from the chair in pain, but Zhang Panda held him tightly up. The potion brought by Zhang Su worked well, and in the end Kevin no longer felt the pain from the wound just now. Next, Panda Zhang turned back into Zhang Su, helping Belle put on the gauze and bandages for Kevin to promote wound healing. Such a scene was going on among the lightly wounded on the side of the road at the same time, and various ghosts and wolves were howling one after another. Just now Zhang Su brought a trio of Harry, Ginny and Neville to Hogsmeade together, and then Zhang Su went to the Pig's Head Bar to find Minister of Magic Scrimgeour, and represented the country to the British Ministry of Magic. A batch of medicines was donated. After getting this batch of timely medicines, Scrimgeour and Zhang Su spoke in official language for a while to express their gratitude to Yubin for their assistance, and then began to distribute the medicines to various medical centers with Zhang Su's help. As for Hallie and the others who followed Zhang Su, after Zhang Su piled up half a container of medicines on the ground from the special treasure bag, they became the porters of the medicines. "I think Zhang brought us here in the first place, just to let us run errands and help carry things," Ron said in a low voice to Neville, who was carrying medicine with him and rushing to various medical points. "That's for sure," said Neville, nodding his head. "Believe it or not, he'll have other work for us after we've moved this. Trust," Ron said firmly. Sure enough, after distributing the medicine, Zhang Su sent them to help take care of the wounded at this time. He also saw Kevin and Belle who were waiting for treatment outside the medical point, so he went to help. After bandaging Kevin, Zhang Su, who had just breathed a sigh of relief, heard the sound of horseshoes not far away. Chapter 491. In a house specially used as a medical point for laceration injuries, all the original rooms have been transformed into treatment rooms and operating rooms, and the doctors are intensively treating the wounded. In one room, a pale, unconscious Welsh lay on a hospital bed as several doctors grapple with what to do with her horrific wound while transfusing her blood. When she was sent by the horse people, the wound was covered with the hemostatic herbs used by the horse people, but these herbs had limited effects, and the blood oozing from the wound dripped all the way. If she had been sent a little later, she would have died from too many lost wounds. However, even at the medical point, the doctors tried various methods such as healing spells and hemostatic potions, but they still failed to stop the bleeding from her wound. Just as the doctors were discussing whether to use radical methods to treat her, the door of the room was pushed open, and a young man in a white coat ran in. "I know which spell she is under, and I know how to undo it," Zhang Su said before the doctors in the room opened their mouths. Just now, Zhang Su asked the horseman who sent Wales to find out more about her injury, and it happened that one of the horsemen witnessed the whole process of her injury. After the horseman described her injury in detail, Zhang Su had a bottom line. Looking at the puzzled eyes of several doctors in front of him, Zhang Su explained, "This curse was invented by a former Hogwarts professor, and he taught me this curse and the method of breaking it many years ago. It can be said that I am one of the only 2 people in this world who know how to break the curse." "Are you sure?" asked a doctor. "Just now I asked the witnesses present, and I'm, % sure that I can cure her," Zhang Su replied seriously. "Then you can try it," another doctor said. Zhang Su came to the hospital bed, took out a wand suitable for fine manipulation, pointed at the deep wound on Welsh's body, and then chanted the spell to undo the curse, while the tip of the wand moved along the wound. The doctor on the side of effective saw that the bleeding speed of the wound had been greatly slowed down. But Zhang Su frowned, because the effect of breaking the curse was worse than he expected. It seems that this curse has made some improvements later. But Zhang Su couldn't be bothered. He immediately made some corresponding changes to the solution. During the second casting of the spell, Wales' wound finally stopped bleeding. After Zhang Su cast the spell for the 3rd time, the wound began to heal slowly. Because her wound was too deep, Zhang Su had to cast spells many times, and it took more than half an hour to finally heal the entire wound. Zhang Su breathed a sigh of relief, and then said to the doctors, who were also relieved, "The curse has been solved, but the wound has not healed very well, and she still needs ordinary treatment." The attending doctor replied, "Leave the rest to us, but unfortunately there is no way to remove the scar. Let's discuss this matter after she wakes up." Zhang Su left the medical point after finishing speaking. After Zhang Su walked out of the room, he found a chair next to the medical point and sat down, then rubbed his swollen temples. "In the morning, I just cast a super large." Zhang Su spent a lot of energy in a short period of time when he used the healing spell that required fine manipulation for half an hour. Now his head was swelling and aching. At this moment, a figure appeared behind Zhang Su, stretched out his small hands to help Zhang Su massage his temples, and then massage his entire head. Soon, the soreness in Zhang Su's head gradually disappeared. "I never thought you would do this," Zhang Su said to the people behind him. Before Dumbledore left, he often suffered from headaches, so I learned this method from Madame Pomfrey to relieve headaches. Meow. Harry said while pressing Zhang Su's head, "I saw you helping people just now." "Heal meow. Thank you for your hard work, meow." "I'm sorry about Dumbledore," Zhang Su said to Harry. "It's none of your business meow," said Harley while pressing the Feng Fu acupoint on the back of Zhang Su's head. "This is his own choice meow. You don't need to blame yourself meow." After a while, Harley first rubbed the back of Zhang Su's neck that was a little stiff because he had been casting spells with his head down, and then suddenly grabbed Zhang Su's neck with both hands from behind, and said viciously, "Hurry up and find a way to make me change. Come back meow, or I will strangle you meow." Zhang Su almost died on the spot. He was not strangled to death, but killed by Meng Men. "It's not that I can't think of a way, but that I really can't do it," Zhang Su replied. "This time you are drinking the latest generation of transformation potion, and the defect that would change back when touched by hot water has disappeared. It has been repaired, so you can only wait a few days for the medicine to wear off." Harry refused, and continued to pinch Zhang Su's neck and shake it violently. "That at least makes me talk back to normal meow," said Harley. It's normal for you to talk like this, how cute. Zhang Su said, if I hadn't already had a girlfriend, it wouldn't be Neville's turn to bully you. Just when Harry lost his mind and tightened his hands, a burst of light flashed from Zhang Su's neck, and then Harry's hands were ejected. During activities in the theater, remember to keep the iron armor curse working at all times. Zhang Su said to Harley while moving his neck, speaking of which, you don't plan to use your own power to dispel this meow that I gave you. Meow curse? The last person who got this curse took less than a day to get rid of the curse on his body. Seeing Harry's bewildered look, Zhang Su felt a little headache. It seems that this baby has never thought about breaking the curse by himself. According to the original plan, Zhang Su only planned to let Harley meow 2 days after the Burrow wedding, and let her recover after that with her current state. Except for the few powerful spells that can be cast silently, her other spells can't be used at all. Now her combat power is about equal to 0.5 geese. It was only because of various accidents after the wedding that he only met Harley again today. You go back tonight and discuss it with Ron and the others. Zhang Su patted Harry on the head, and left before she could react. Just now Zhang Su saw Cedric coming out of the Pig's Hut bar and waved to him, so he said goodbye to Harry and walked towards the Pig's Hut bar. There's something I want you to see, Cedric said to Zhang Su in a low voice, and then led him into the Pig's Hut bar. Chapter 492. In a room in the Pig's Head, Zhang Su, Scrimgeour, Neville's father, Mr. Longbottom, Cedric, and Percy Weasley gathered around a table. These 5 people were concentrating on studying a piece or lump of silver-white metal objects on the table. At this time, Cedric was explaining the origin of this metal object to Zhang Su, who had just arrived. This morning, an observation post on the top of the northern mountain was attacked by more than a dozen Death Eaters. At that time, the personnel inside the observation post made a symbolic resistance and retreated after wounding a few Death Eaters. Cedric took a deep look at Zhang Su, and then continued, about half an hour later, a violent explosion occurred on the top of the observation post. Within the bounds of Hogsmeade Village. I buried the explosives. Zhang Su admitted decisively. Everyone in the headquarters knew that he was there at the time. Could it be that falling rocks damaged the house? You should claim compensation from me. Ahem. Cedric coughed twice and said, actually, your house on the mountainside was the most damaged. Then Percy, the tenant of the house, gave the stunned Zhang Su a sideways look, and said, if we didn't know that the explosion was caused by you, we wouldn't have rushed to repair the smashed house just now. Let's get down to business. Cedric continued, just after the battle, when the residents on the side of Hogsmeade Backing Mountain began to clean up the stones that fell from the mountain, they found this piece of metal that fell together with the gravel. Zhang Su moved closer to the metal bump on the table and observed it carefully. This seems to be a cylindrical object, but judging from its current appearance, it seems to have been hit hard. Zhang Su said while observing. When it fell from a high altitude, it stuck on the stone road, and then it was hit by other falling stones. It was found under a large piece of rubble, Cedric said. Have you tried to fix it? Zhang Su asked. No spells will work on it, Cedric replied. You might as well try. Zhang Su didn't try it, and he probably couldn't do it if others couldn't. I think it turned out to be a metal arm. Zhang Su finally concluded, everyone, look at the end that was originally inserted into the ground. The layout of these 5 severely distorted parts matches the 5 fingers of a human palm. Then the part that comes down is a lot like the palm and wrist. Several other people glanced at each other and then nodded. They obviously agreed with Zhang Su's opinion. Scrimgeour asked, so, do you know which Death Eater this metal arm belongs to? They knew that Zhang Su had a lot of information about the Death Eaters, so they called him in for help. Zhang Su thought for a while, and then a name popped out of his mouth, Igor Karkaroff. According to reliable information, before the mysterious man lost power 16 years ago, he made a plan to control Durmstrang and Volksbüttens. The mysterious man plans to send Death Eaters whose identities have been washed clean to enter these 2 magic schools, and then wait for an opportunity to become the principals of these 2 schools. Ultimately, these 2 schools will become a bridgehead for attacking the European continent. After the mysterious man disappeared, Karkaroff still faithfully carried out the plan, and finally he became the headmaster of Durmstrang. As for Volksbüttens, the Death Eaters who were sent there quickly disappeared due to the presence of Nicholas May, an NBSP, in the summer of 1995. In order to prepare to restore the magic of the body, the mysterious man had to expose Karkaroff to capture Harry. Later Karkaroff sacrificed his arm in this magic ceremony. After the mysterious man regained his body and strength, he gave Karkaroff a metal arm. After Zhang Su finished telling the information he knew, several people present fell into thinking again. Then is there any evidence that this metal arm belongs to Karkaroff? Mr. Longbottom asked. We can look for blood and other debris at the connection, Percy said, pointing to the place where the stone was crushed. Then we can try it with Polyjuice Potion. Everyone felt that Percy's method was feasible, and after using many methods, they finally found some human body debris from it. Not long after, a cup of compound decoction filled with human body debris was placed on the table, and then everyone turned their attention to Cedric, who had the lowest position in the room. Cedric. Flustered, Cyrillic lettered there with the enthusiastic help of Zhang Su and Percy, Cedric drank the cup of compound soup in one gulp. It seems that Karkaroff is right, Scrimgeour said, looking at Cedric Karkaroff, who had not spoken much. Can you confirm that Karkaroff and the others are all dead? Zhang Su asked. Because the explosion may be violent, and the explosion site is located on the top of the mountain, the corpses are distributed in a wide range, so it is very difficult to search for the dead bodies, Mr. Longbottom said. Now Zhang is laughing wildly in his heart. When Karkaroff dragged him off the train like a dead dog, he wrote down the name of this guy in the little black book at present. It seems that Karkaroff took a dirt plane and turned into a goddess, which is really revenge. Based on my judgment, Karkaroff's immortality is about the same, Scrimgeour said. We already know that Karkaroff has a high status among the Death Eaters. He is likely to be the commander-in-chief of today's offensive. This can explain why he went to the top of the mountain. It is indeed an observation battlefield, great place to fight with command. After the explosion, the command of the attacking Death Eaters obviously lacked flexibility and coordination. They were more like acting according to a predetermined plan. Not long after the battle reached its peak, the Death Eaters were suddenly defeated. At that time, we thought they had some kind of conspiracy. If Karkaroff, the commander-in-chief of the Death Eaters, died in the explosion, then everything would make sense. The more Scrimgeour talked, the more excited he became. It could be seen that he still attached great importance to the achievement of killing Karkaroff and repelling the Death Eaters' attack today. At this time Zhang Su suddenly said, when you report the killing of Karkaroff, you should say that Harry Potter did it. Don't drag me into it. Why? Scrimgeour looked at Zhang Su suspiciously. Why don't you want this honor? Material rewards can be given to me, and spiritual rewards can be given directly to Harry Potter. He should also appear in front of the public shiningly. Zhang Su said, I think the Ministry of Magic will carry out a series of publicity campaigns next. Naturally, promoting Harry Potter is more inspiring than promoting me at this time. Scrimgeour and Mr. Longbottom looked at Zhang Su in disbelief. What kind of spirit is this kind of spirit of giving away their achievements to friends for free? On the other hand, Percy and Cedric looked at Zhang Su with a full face, and they could tell the other two leaders responsibly that this was the spirit of throwing the blame away. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 493 Sacrifice. After solving Karkaroff's matter, Zhang Su and Percy left the Pig's Head Bar together. As soon as he walked out of the door, he saw Ron and Neville, with tears in their eyes, carrying a stretcher covered with a white cloth from a house used as a medical point to the place where the victims were temporarily placed not far away. Followed by Harley and the other three girls. Seeing this scene, Zhang Su froze for a moment. He turned to look at Percy beside him, and found that he was also looking at himself in surprise. So Zhang Su and Percy followed at the same time. At the end of Hogsmeade's main road not far from the Pig's Head pub, 2 rows of stretchers covered with white cloth were neatly arranged on the ground. A staff member with a gloomy face came over, asked Ron a few words in a low voice, and then he pointed to one of the rows of stretchers on the ground, signaling Ron and the others to put the stretchers there. In this section of the street, there is only the whirring of the north wind, and the weeping mixed with the wind from time to time. Ron and Neville gently placed the stretcher in the row belonging to the Auror's victims, and another member of the Ministry of Magic walked over with a notepad and a quill. They all knew the staff member, Zhang Su. She was Gemma Farley, the headmistress of the Snake Academy in the same class as Percy. When Gemma Farley lifted the white cloth covering the victim's head, she shouted in surprise, Canning. At the same time, the notepad and quill in her hand fell to the ground with a click. At this time Zhang Su and Percy also recognized the victim. George Canning, a former student of Hogwarts Snake House, also served as the president of the Boys' Union in 19,921,993. In the basilisk-infested school year, it was he, Zhang Su, Percy and others who formed Hogwarts' first student self-defense force from scratch in the final decisive battle with the basilisk. He also brilliantly directed the evacuation of the students in the castle. In addition, it was only because of his efforts that the students of the Snake Academy changed their attitude of "I can't die with my pure blood anyway" and joined the ranks of fighting against a basilisk. After graduation, he joined the ranks of Aurors along with many of his classmates who participated in the Battle of the Basilisk. Bloodlines are glory, but they should not be the shackles of our self-styled shackles. Going back 3,000 years, which of our families dare to claim their ancestors must be a wizard? It is the driving force for us to strive for strength and strive for the top forever, rather than a reason for our arrogance. This is the point of view that George Canning has always insisted on. It is this point of view that has influenced many students of the Snake Academy, and made them let go of their prejudices and join hands with students from other colleges to fight against the enemy. It's just that the high-spirited president of the Students' Union back then has now turned into a cold corpse, lying under a white cloth. Percy walked over, patted Gemma Farley on the shoulder, and softly comforted his old classmate who was covering his face and crying. Today, this sad scene is repeated here, and other staff members who are responsible for registering identities and arranging remains just glanced at this side, and then resumed their work at hand. Zhang Su looked around and saw an acquaintance sitting on the stone steps in front of her house not far away, so he walked over and sat down beside him. Rejecting the cigarettes offered by Belle, Zhang Su took out 2 cans of beer, frozen them and handed one to Belle. The two bumped into each other, and after drinking half a can of beer in one gulp, they quietly looked at the victims in front of them. Zhang Su didn't know how many familiar people like George Canning would lie under the white cloth like the person in front of him now and in the future. Sometimes the dead is just a number, but for some people, the appearance of the dead is to poach a part of their life away. At this time, another person sat beside Zhang Su. Not long after, a smell of burning cigars wafted from the side. "Is this the result you want?" Horatio Rodney asked Zhang Su, pointing at the dead in front of him with a cigar in his hand. "If it were us, today there would be an artillery company providing fire support, 2 machine gun platoons on the flanks providing fire support, and 3 infantry companies making roundabouts and encircling them." Zhang Su said calmly, "Dumbledore and I are formulating when planning, although you didn't say it clearly. You have already taken your firepower advantage into consideration. So I don't understand why you guys still use thin red line tactics when you clearly have ways to reduce casualties. Maybe Saddam Hussein come to command? He is more optimistic than the current situation. At least he will use artillery and air force." Old Rodney's throat moved a few times, trying to say something, but in the end it turned into a sigh. "Having said that, I can't say any more." Old Rodney was silent for a long time. After smoking the cigar in his hand, he got up and left. Belle, who was sitting on the side, said at this time, "It's not that we don't want to do some things, but we can't." Zhang Su guessed half of the reason, but this is not something he can change. So all Zhang Su could do was sigh. Not far away, Harry and the others found a few more acquaintances under the white cloth, and the hands and feet of the group were already shaking. This is the reality they have to face. Zhang Su brought them here today to let them understand what the next battle will be like. The era of the disarming curse, petrification curse, and stunning curse has passed, and what they will face next will be a bloody and cruel world. If Harley fails to survive this level, then Zhang Su can only give her to the remaining Dementors. After finishing the beer in his hand, Zhang Su stood up and walked outside Hogsmeade Village. The corpses of the Death Eaters who were killed today have been collected, and they are all neatly arranged in the open space outside the village. The Aurors of the Ministry of Magic and Percy's Rainbow Squad members are recording the characteristics of the dead Death Eaters, and then passing them on to the International Auror Organization to determine the identities of these dark wizards from various European countries. After going around in and out of Hogsmeade, Zhang Su brought Harry and the others back to Hogwarts, and then returned to the Rockwell Hotel in Edinburgh without having dinner. After returning to the room, Zhang Su wrote today's experience into a detailed report, which was encrypted, packaged, and re-encrypted, and sent back to China. After finishing all this, Zhang Su took a hot bath, lay down on the bed and didn't want to move. His head has been aching since the afternoon, and now he needs a full night's sleep to refresh himself. Chapter 494. Zhang Su, who was lying on the bed, had just drawn the curtains with magic and was about to turn off the ceiling light in the room when there was a knock on the door of the room. Zhang Su thought it was the delivery of dinner, and opened the door with a wave of his hand, only to find that it was Welsh, who was seriously injured this morning, who walked in. "Why are you here? If you are injured, you should go back and rest more," Zhang Su said to Wales anxiously, and at the same time was about to get up from the bed. Unexpectedly, Wales suddenly jumped onto the bed and pinned Zhang Su under him. "I heard that you saved me today." Welsh rested his head on Zhang Su's chest and said softly, "It's just a little effort." Zhang Su helped Wales up. "It just so happens that I know what curse hurt you, and I just know how to break the curse. Your wound is deep, and you need to rest more. You should go back first. Why don't you help me check how my wound is recovering?" Welsh said while sitting on Zhang Su's lap and taking off his shirt. After taking off her blouse, under the light, a hideous scar could divide the towering part of her left chest into two. Zhang Su sighed, and said, "If you take medicine now, you can still get rid of this scar." Wales leaned over, her left hand grabbed Zhang Su's right hand forcefully, and brought his paw to the scar. "Why don't you come and apply the medicine yourself?" Zhang Su struggled to move his hand away, and at the same time said, "Don't make trouble, people will die later." "It's okay." Wales continued to bend down. "I'll take care of myself if someone dies, and I won't trouble you." Then there was a flutter of chicken and dog jumping, so I won't repeat the book. 5 minutes later, Wales, who had redressed, was sitting on a chair, looking at Zhang Su, who was writing hard at the desk, and Scarlet, who was poking Zhang Su's head with a magic wand and preaching, a little embarrassing. The majestic Scarlet poked out the afterimage of the wand in his hand, and yelled at Zhang Su, "If you don't copy the school rules 10 times by hand tonight, you won't be able to eat or sleep." Since the founding of Hogwarts, the length of the school rules has grown with the age of the school. In addition, Filch's hobby over the years has been to add bricks and tiles to the school rules, which makes the length of the current Hogwarts school rules can be called fear. It's just that under the current situation, Zhang Su had to vomit blood and honestly copy the school rules with a pen, at least to deal with the current situation. After tidying up Zhang Su, Scarlet looked at Wales, who was sitting aside. "It's so late. You, a seriously wounded person, don't go back to rest obediently. Come here to play and kill someone. You won't be afraid that the wound will be crushed by him," Scarlet said to Wales, and at the same time, the wand held in the right hand was tapped in the palm of the left palm, and there was a tendency to cast a spell on it if there was a disagreement. When she came in with Zhang Su's dinner just now, she saw that the person in front of her was going to rape someone. She exited the door of the room and looked at the room number again. After confirming that she had not gone to the wrong door, she pulled out her wand and beat Zhang up. "I made an appointment with him tonight." Welsh pointed to Zhang Su and said. Zhang Su, who was copying the school rules, heard the noise in the back of his head, subconsciously dodged and said, "I just asked her to exchange information, and I have no other intentions. Otherwise, why would I ask you to bring me dinner? It's okay. You come in time, or I'll be chased guaranteed." Box 2 things have gotten to this point, and the exchange of information can no longer continue. Anyway, this is not urgent information, so we can only meet at dawn. Seeing that there were only Scarlet and himself in the room, Zhang Su put down the pen in his hand and stretched out his hand to the dinner beside him. "Eat, eat, eat, you know how to eat." Scarlet poked Zhang Su lightly twice with his finger, but passing by did not stop him from eating without finishing copying the school rules. "If you can't use magic, don't hurry up. Let me tell you, if I come late, I will see how long you have to kneel on the durian skin." The way Scarlet acted just now was partly out of anger, partly for outsiders to see. Major hazards must be discovered, monitored and dealt with early, so Scarlet took Zhang to make an example to others, and warned him not to have any thoughts that he shouldn't have. Now that there are no outsiders, the force of the chicken-killing knife is naturally lighter. I didn't know it would turn out like this. Fortunately, there was no problem with a pair eating when I came back. All I can do now is draw the curtains and open the door. Otherwise, I would have turned into a giant panda just now. Zhang Su, after opening the bag for dinner, he said, "Is there some old injury involved?" Scarlet asked with concern, "Do you want to go back to China for a checkup first? Let's go back to Hogwarts tomorrow. It's better for me to hide for the next 2 days." Zhang Su said while eating a sandwich. I should just lie down for 2 days. I won't participate in the next battle. Then you can go back to Hogwarts and lie down obediently in the dormitory. Scarlet poked Zhang Su a few more times with his wand. Stop messing around with the women. Don't poke, be careful, I will poke back. I'm afraid of you. I'm afraid not. Come again if you have the ability. Just lie down. Just as the two goblins were fighting, sirens sounded over Hogsmeade. Since the afternoon, the southwest wind has swept across the UK with water vapor from the Atlantic Ocean. The sky over the entire British Isle is covered with dark clouds, and the land without moonlight is pitch black. In the open space to the south of the village, all the corpses of the Death Eaters who were killed during the day have been counted, and they have been put into body bags one by one, waiting for the next step. At midnight, when two Aurors patrolling the edge of Hogsmeade passed the morgue with body bags, they couldn't help but shudder at the gloomy scene in front of them. Listen, there seems to be some noise over there. An Auror patted his companions on patrol, and then pointed to the corpses of those Death Eaters. Don't scare me on purpose, it's just the sound of the wind, or the sound of mice and foxes coming and going. Another Auror thought his companion was trying to scare him. No, it's not the sound of a rat, it's a corpse moving. The Auror who first noticed something was wrong shouted. His companion also noticed something was wrong at this time, and he cast a lighting spell towards the place where the sound sounded in the morgue. Then the two Aurors were horrified to find that the corpse, which was lying neatly on the ground, began to squirm in the body bag. Chapter 495 The Shame of the Walking Dead World. When Scarlet brought Zhang Su back to Hogwarts, it was already the end of lunch. Zhang Su accidentally met Percy in the hall. Why are you here? What's the matter? Zhang Su asked Percy in surprise. Now Hogsmeade can't stay, and there's no way to eat there, Percy said with a look of embarrassment. At this moment, Harry just came out of the cafeteria. When he heard Percy talking about Hogsmeade, he also had a disgusted expression on his face. Then he rushed out of the castle gate and vomited in the flower bed beside the gate. The dazed Zhang Su went over and patted Holly on the back, took out a bottle of Wahaha mineral water to rinse her mouth, and said to her, "Your reaction is wrong. It stands to reason that 6 weeks after the end of menstruation, only then will there be a pregnancy reaction. Didn't you just come to your period, or I will take you to the hospital for an examination." Harley, who was gargling, was choked to death by Zhang Su's words, but Zhang Su had accumulated power in his mind for a long time, so he lost the opportunity to take revenge when he couldn't use magic. At this time, Percy also walked out of the castle gate, and asked Zhang Su curiously, "You don't know what happened in Hogsmeade last night?" Zhang Su shook his head. Percy looked at his somewhat haggard face and the unabated marks on his neck, and understood in seconds. Percy brought Zhang Su to the basilisk fountain in front of the castle gate, and after sitting down on a stone bench, he told in detail what happened in Hogsmeade last night. At around 2 in the morning, the Aurors patrolling outside immediately noticed movement in the Death Eaters' morgue, and then they noticed the corpses in the body bags moving. The Aurors on patrol sounded the alarm immediately, and then the Aurors, soldiers and us were also in position immediately. Then I found that the corpses of those Death Eaters all moved by themselves. When Percy said this, Zhang Su asked, "You mean the corpses of those Death Eaters started to move by themselves, rather than someone casting spells on them?" Zhang Su was keenly aware of an unusual detail in what Percy said. Percy nodded solemnly, and said, "I know what you mean. At that time, there were no wizards in the morgue who used magic to turn corpses into infernal corpses, and there were no conditions for turning corpses into infernal corpses. Those corpses were like the alarm clock rang at a certain time, and all the Death Eater corpses started to move in just a few minutes." Zhang Su and Percy knew that Voldemort had the habit of using yin corpses on a large scale, so their first reaction was that these corpses became yin corpses. However, they all learned about infernal corpses in the Defense Against the Dark Arts class and other channels, and had a certain understanding of how to make infernal corpses, so they all discovered that the morgues at that time were not equipped to manufacture corpses on a large scale. The conditions for becoming a corpse. So what are the characteristics of those corpses? Zhang Su asked. Because in addition to yin corpses, dead corpses can also become walking dead such as zombies, and resurrected corpses. Among these walking dead, zombies will be contagious, and if they fail, they will explode on a large scale. Although Zhang spoofed his own pharmaceutical company as Umbrella, it didn't mean he was willing to experience Resident Evil himself. Zombies have high agility, high attack power, and strong toxicity. Zhang was bitten 2 years ago. The resurrected corpse has a certain IQ, but its memory is not good, so it can only act according to the owner's instructions. Compared with this, the danger level of the corpse that can only eat living things is not high. So the first task now is to figure out what kind of death these Death Eater corpses have become. I don't know. Percy said helplessly, spreading his hands. What? Zhang Su asked in surprise. The commotion is so loud, you don't even know what they look like. Percy sighed and said, at that time, all the corpses of those Death Eaters were put into body bags. The body bags provided by the army were made of canvas on the outside and waterproof on the inside, because they had to be used on the battlefield. They are used on the road, so they are made very strong, and they are all sealed tightly with strong zippers. So, those corpses have been making trouble in the body bag for a long time, but none of them can destroy the body bag and escape. Zhang Su asked, covering his face. Percy nodded. Think about the scene at that time. The body bags squirmed on the ground like maggots. That scene is really a shame to the Walking Dead world. Get out of the group. Then how do you deal with them? Zhang Su asked. Because I was worried about accidents, I piled them all together and burned them with a fierce fire curse. Percy said with a bitter face. Then the smell is very bad, right? Now that the wind has turned to the south, the smell is all drifting towards Hogsmeade, so it's so smoky that you can't eat there, so you come here to eat, right? Zhang Su then said for Percy. Seeing Harry's disgusted look just now, Zhang Su could guess how sad Hogsmeade is now. Percy nodded and said, now you can't breathe without wearing a foam hood over there. The Ministry of Magic is digging a hole in the mountain to the north, and is going to bury the wreckage deep. Then there is nothing wrong with the Auror who died yesterday? Zhang Su asked. No, everything's fine. But today they're buried, Percy replied. Now the Ministry of Magic is trying to find out what happened to the corpses of those Death Eaters. Percy continued. Zhang Su thought for a while, pointed to the Forbidden Forest and said, didn't the Ministry of Magic send anyone to the Forbidden Forest? In the Forbidden Forest, Percy asked in surprise. The horseman sent the wounded over yesterday. Didn't the Ministry of Magic think of this? Zhang Su asked in surprise. Who knows? Percy said helplessly. Recently, the decision of the Ministry of Magic is not quite right. I have heard Cedric complain once or twice. Then you go to Professor McGonagall first, and ask her to ask where the centaurs threw those corpses yesterday. Zhang Su said to Percy, then you let the Ministry of Magic go to the Forbidden Forest to find them slowly. You can always find some. If you are a guide in the Forbidden Forest, you can call Fred or George to help. Aren't you going? Percy asked. You're a better guide in the Forbidden Forest than Fred and George. I'm going back to the dormitory to sleep now. Zhang Su said to Percy after standing up from the stone chair, I'll take it as a credit to you. Young people, take care of your health, said Percy. Chapter 496 Zombies are coming? Exclamation mark. Zhang Su's attempt to be lazy was ruthlessly broken. He returned to the dormitory of the Eagle Academy and slept for less than 2 hours before he was woken up. Why is it you? Zhang Su yawned and looked at the person standing on the bed and asked, what's the matter? I heard you can't use magic now, can you? Harry asked with concern. Huh? Zhang Su sat up from the bed and asked in surprise, why don't you meow anymore? After the hard work of several of us last night, I have cracked your magic, Harry said triumphantly. Tisk. Zhang Su smacked his lips, it's not cute at all. Next, I will make you cute too. Harry raised his wand and said to Zhang Su, it's time for revenge. Are you sure? Zhang Su also raised the magic wand on the bedside, maybe I can still use 1 or 2 spells. If you are my enemy, you might get pregnant. Pervert. Harry subconsciously covered his chest with his left hand. Zhang Su saw Harry's movements, and then deliberately licked his lips. Harry subconsciously took a step back. Childish Harley, you can do anything in battle. Zhang Su said to Harley. Harley, disarm you. Zhang Su already knew what the other party was thinking before Harry finished reciting the spell. He let go of his wand, and at the same time picked up the quilt covering him and threw it at Harry. The working principle of the disarming spell is a bit confusing. As long as the person who is hit subjectively regards the object in his hand as the weapon's own weapon, then this thing will fly to the person who cast the spell. Zhang Su took advantage of this feature of the disarming curse, and Li Deiteo froze, turning his quilt into a weapon. After being hit by the disarming curse, the entire quilt flew towards Harry. Just when Harley was about to use a spell to break Zhang Su's quilt, a bolt of lightning flew from the gap under the quilt and hit Harley's calf, and then Harley felt as if he had been hit by an electric mosquito swatter trembling. In just a short time, Zhang Su's quilt rolled up Harry. 3 You know nothing about power. Zhang Su said while poking Harry, who has rolled into a sushi roll, with his wand. You guys come in. Zhang Su called out to the door of the dormitory. The next second, Ron, Hermione, Ginny, and Neville came in laughing and playing. Among them, Ginny took a camera and took a quick shot of Harley Roll, who was wriggling violently on the ground. Then Ginny put away the camera dejectedly, took out 2 gold coins from her pocket, and handed them to Hermione and Neville respectively. Ron also paid for it. I said, you are betting on us. Zhang Su immediately figured out what they were doing. They think that Harley can hang you up and beat you when you can't use powerful magic. Neville said while putting away the gold coins. But we don't think so. Hermione also smiled and put away the gold coins she won. As for the 2 losers, they have already settled accounts with Harley. I said, you won money by relying on me, don't you want to thank me? Zhang Su looked at Hermione and Neville and said, you are so rich, don't you care about our little money? Neville said. Zhang Su looked at Neville, and suddenly said with a smile, Neville, I have a bottle of drink here, you can have a sip. Neville looked at Zhang Su who had a wicked smile on his face, then looked at the Harley Roll on the ground, then immediately turned around and ran out of Zhang Su's dormitory, as if he had to become Neville a second later. Zhang Su put on his robe, and after tidying up, he asked the dejected Harley and the others, why do you come here to bully me when you have so much time? Something happened in the Forbidden Forest. Hermione, he replied, we found zombies in the Forbidden Forest just now. Are you sure it's a zombie, not an infernal corpse we've seen before or something else? Zhang Su asked with his eyes wide open in surprise. We found infected swallowtail dogs and deer in the Forbidden Forest, as well as gnawed unicorns. Hermione replied, more importantly, we found the remains of some mutated corpses. Tell me in detail. Zhang Su got 2 chairs in front of the desk and called Hermione to sit down. After sitting down, Hermione said, just now Percy asked Professor McGonagall to contact the Centaur tribe, and learned about the place where the Centaur dumped the corpses of Death Eaters. Later, Percy, Professor Lupin, Professor Black and Moody went to the Forbidden Forest together. They found the place where the corpses of Death Eaters were discarded, but they didn't find the whole corpse there. And they developed the remains of a unicorn not far away. Later we went with Neville to the defense line at the edge of the Forbidden Forest, and found the remains of some humans, swallowtail dogs and deer destroyed by peas and watermelons. You didn't get close to those wreckage, did you? Zhang Su asked nervously. Hermione froze for a moment. Seeing the expression on Hermione's face, Zhang Su immediately stood up and ran out of the dormitory. In the Hogwarts dining hall, an emergency meeting is being held. Do we have to do this? Black asked Zhang Su with a dark face. The 5 idiots must be isolated and observed for a period of time. Zhang Su replied in an unquestionable tone, at the same time, find a way to notify Snape and let him know that Harry may be infected. Why tell the snot-nosed one? Blake's face became more and more aligned with his last name. If Harley is really infected, Snape is her only hope. Zhang Su said, because she is Lily's child. Everyone was just tacit about Snape's incident. Now that Zhang Su brought it up in the Hogwarts circle, there was no reaction except that Lupin and Black felt a little uncomfortable. Is the matter really so serious this time? Professor McGonagall asked with a cold face. If something really happened to Harley, it would be a big deal. Before Snape sends the news back, we can't be too careful. Zhang Su said, although the types of zombies are different, some basic characteristics are the same. First of all, animals other than Death Eaters were infected, indicating that this mutation is contagious across species. But we don't know the route of infection and the conditions of the mutation so far, so it cannot be completely ruled out that the 5 of them were infected. Possibility of infection. Secondly, the unicorns that were eaten were found in the Forbidden Forest, which means that the effect of unicorn blood has no effect on purifying this mutation. The only good news at the moment is that this mutation is very likely to be controllable. Because it is impossible for the Death Eaters to know who will die in Hogsmeade and the Forbidden Forest, and all the intact corpses have been mutated. From this point, it can be inferred that all the Death Eaters who participated in the battle yesterday had mutated seeds buried in their bodies, and the opportunity for the outbreak of the seeds is death or time. No matter from which point of view, If the Death Eaters do not want to destroy themselves, then there must be a way to suppress or remove the seeds from the living Death Eaters. After Zhang Su finished speaking, the cafeteria fell into silence. Although some people thought Zhang Su was a bit alarmist, they didn't dare to gamble. In the wizarding world, the more evil things happen, the higher the chance. I'm going to contact Snape now. It was Lupin who broke the silence first, and his reason told him that this matter must be treated with caution. With Lupin as an example, others began to express their belief in Zhang Su's words. Then Professor McGonagall began to arrange for people to burn the wreckage near the school first, and then organize people to clean up the Forbidden Forest at the same time. He did not forget to notify the Ministry of Magic and ask them to step up their vigilance. I hope this mutation will not spread on a large scale. Scarlet, who walked out of the cafeteria with Zhang Su, sighed. If that's the case, I would have taken you away as soon as there was a sign. Zhang Su replied. Chapter 497. After walking out of the cafeteria, Zhang Su came to the kitchen, where there was a pot of mutton herbal food stewed so mouth-watering. This is stewed by Zhang Su before going to bed in the dormitory. Although it is a little earlier than the expected start time, the mutton stew that has been stewed for more than 2 hours is considered ready to eat. Knowing his own affairs, Zhang Su already had a clear understanding of his current physical condition after the wholesale sale of the Cruciatus curse last year. He still has some tricks that he hasn't done well. He hadn't fully recovered from the exhaustion of preparing for the college entrance examination, and then cast 2 spells that required precise control in a row yesterday. His spirit was hollowed out, and the old injury recurred in the next few days. He could only use less magic, less fatigue, more medicine, and more sleep. After eating a pot of mutton with bread, Zhang Su went to the prefect's bathroom to take a comfortable bath, then returned to the dormitory, hung a do not disturb sign on the door, and he used a bunch of spells to seal the door, and then got into bed and fell asleep. There may have been a knock on the door during the period, but it didn't matter to Zhang Su, who was snoring. What Zhang didn't know was that when he was snoring under the covers, Downing Street panicked. In the wizarding world, the production of infectious walking dead-like zombies is quite difficult, so it is difficult to manufacture them on a large scale in a short period of time. For a long time, the Ministry of Magic has only wiped out a very small number of undeveloped zombies, or some zombies that failed to manufacture. When the Ministry of Magic received the news from Hogwarts that the corpses of those Death Eaters last night were not infernal corpses but zombies, the Aurors who were sent to the Forbidden Forest to find out gave a positive answer. After that, Scrimgeour and the others began to panic. Even more panicked was Downing Street, who got the news. Since the American film Night of the Living Dead, released in 1968, opened the prelude to the zombie film and television theme, until the release of Resident Evil last year, for nearly 30 years, the image of zombies has left a shadow in the hearts of many viewers and players. So when the Prime Minister was about to go home from work and have dinner with his family, when he received a report of a large-scale zombie in Scotland, the Prime Minister was so frightened that his first reaction was to call the Vanguard-class strategic nuclear submarine that was on duty in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. Prepare for the Trident to wash the ground. We must find out all the information about the zombies. It is best to capture one alive, and then we must make a danger level assessment as soon as possible. This is the last instruction given by the Prime Minister before leaving get off work. So various departments in the UK immediately mobilized elite forces to form a team, and after a dinner at Hogwarts, they entered the Forbidden Forest. Dividing line, that's why you just came back from the Forbidden Forest. Zhang Su, who woke up energetic, met Lupin and the others, who were haggard and covered in grass clippings and dew, at the cafeteria door. Lupin nodded listlessly. It seems that he was very busy last night. Did you find anything? Zhang Su asked eagerly. 2 zombies were captured alive, as well as several infected animals. Lupin said after sitting down at the long table. They were all taken away by government soldiers. That's good. Zhang Su sat down next to Lupin, ignoring Black, who was sitting on the other side of Lupin. Muggles are better than wizards at dealing with contagious hazards. Proliferation. After all, the biological weapons studied by Muggles are more terrifying than black magic, and the British government has a biosafety level, laboratory. Although Lupin doesn't know biosafety level, what is a laboratory, but he can tell from Zhang Su's relieved expression that in Zhang Su's view, this is the best choice. We also discovered last night that in addition to being bitten by zombies, animals that eat zombie corpses will also become zombies. Lupin said while eating breakfast. Zhang Su covered his face, and then said a word. Crow Lupin stopped reaching for the sandwich on the table, and then shivered. Crows eat carrion if they eat zombie corpses, zombies flying all over the sky and spreading around. How terrifying it is. We can only tell Hagrid to let the Thestrals block the sky of the Forbidden Forest. Lupin said. Zhang Su nodded. He could only rely on Thestrals. He couldn't let people fly in the sky on a broom all day long. What are your plans next? Zhang Su asked nervously. It was related to whether he wanted to get a typewriter and take it with him when he came back. Wait for the results of the government's research before making any further plans, Lupin said. Zhang Su curled his lips, but he also knew that this was a normal procedure. If he made a random decision, the consequences of civil chaos might be even more serious. Is there any news from Snape? Zhang Su finally asked. Lupin froze for a moment, then shook his head. Zhang Su returned to the long table in Eagle Yard, and sat beside Scarlet, who was lying on the table. Poke Scarlet in the face to wake her up. It's just a whole night. How can you be so tired? Zhang Su asked after taking a piece of cake. Tired. Scarlet continued to lie on the table and said. Zhang Su tore off a piece of the cake that the other party could eat in one bite, and stuffed it into her mouth. This kind of behavior of Zhang Su and the others caused serious discomfort to everyone in the cafeteria, coughing everywhere for a while. Therefore, after breakfast, Zhang Su was sent to be on duty outside the castle. Although he didn't use much magic, he could still do early warning. So Zhang Su found a seat under the tall nuts beside the flower bed on the lawn outside the castle. After sitting comfortably, he took out a full set of dunks he had bought while traveling in Japan to pass the time. When Zhang Su overturned the page coach, I want to play basketball, Lupin came to him. Snape has news, Lupin said to Zhang Su, he wants you to meet him alone. Zhang Su frowned, closed the manga and asked, what about the time and place? The time is within today, and the location is his home. Lupin continued to ask, do you need us to go together? No need. Zhang Su shook his head and said, under the current situation, he can still be trusted. Others may cause trouble if they go. Lupin didn't say much. He knew that with Zhang Su's personality, he would not put himself in danger. In the afternoon, Zhang Su left Hogwarts with a basket of fruit in his hand. Chapter 498 Snape, it smells so good. Britain is the first country in the world to complete the Industrial Revolution, but its typical industrialization model of pollution first, governance later has cost the land a huge price. From the moment Zhang Su set foot on Hogwarts, he felt the consequences of environmental pollution. Since the implementation of Mrs. Thatcher's deindustrialization policy, many factories in the UK have been closed, and Hogwarts is no exception. Standing on the river bank, you can see the towering but abandoned factory chimneys. Only the river water is black as ink, and the garbage floating on it are telling how noisy the factories used to be here. Now that there are no factories in the local area, it means that the fiscal revenue here has decreased, and the local government has therefore cut public expenditures. This has led to the government having no money to hire enough sanitation workers to clean up the garbage here, which eventually caused the tragedy of garbage everywhere. Now Zhang Su could only carefully look for a place to stay among the garbage dumps, while complaining that the environment here matched Snape's unwashed hair for who knows how many years. After finally coming to Spider's End Alley, Zhang Su found Snape's house among a row of identical houses. After turning around to make sure there was no ambush, he stepped forward and knocked on the door of Snape's house. The door opened with a squeak, and Snape's face, which was cold enough to stop global warming, appeared behind the door. Zhang Su hurriedly said hello, long time no see, Snape. The corner of Snape's mouth twitched, and he gave up the position for Zhang Su to enter without a word. Snape's family has always advocated energy saving, low carbon and environmental protection. In other words, candles should be used as little as possible. The result is that the room is extremely dark. If you have bad eyesight, you will easily hit a chair or drop something. Moreover, the living room is surrounded by bookcases full of various books, and it would be another round of tragedy if they fell and bumped into them. Zhang Su put the fruit basket on the table in the living room, and was surprised to find an apron hanging on the chair beside him. There was a secret door not far from this chair. The steak is cooking in the pan. Hey, haven't you had dinner either? Zhang Su asked curiously, do you mind inviting me to have dinner together? Although Snape said mind, Zhang still forced Snape to add a piece of steak to the pot with his thick skin that could resist the curse. The atmosphere of this dinner was extremely cold. After dinner, Snape began to ask Zhang Su, "What's the matter with Potter?" That day he went to the Forbidden Forest with his little friends, and then came across the wreckage of several moving corpses, and they went up to study them at a close distance. Zhang Su replied, using Shen Fang to test the man sitting across from him was pissed off, peeling the fruit after dinner. Snape quietly watched Zhang Su use the magic spell he invented to peel an apple into bunnies, but now his heart was completely calm. He naturally understood Zhang Su's intention of using this magic in front of him. The condition for teaching Zhang Su this magic back then was to protect Harry Potter. Now Zhang Su used Apple Bunny to remind him that although Lao Deng died, the agreement from that year was still valid. Snape made too he at first, laughing at Harry's mindless recklessness. Zhang Su nodded in agreement. And NBSP, it was really reckless for a few of them to do this. 72 hours. Snape said, as long as you don't die within 72 hours after being infected, you won't become a zombie. Zhang Su breathed a sigh of relief, and then asked, then will it be contagious during the incubation period? Is there any effective treatment? No comment, said Snape, as long as the infected don't die. Looking at Snape's resolute refusal expression, Zhang Su could tell that he didn't plan to reveal any more valuable content. The full set of photos of the girl you captured that day. Zhang Su asked directly. This is a virus developed by the Dark Lord himself and several of us. This virus combines the characteristics of necromancer magic and rabies virus, etc. It has the advantages of being latent and contagious, and there is no obvious concurrent feature during the incubation period. The disadvantage is that the incubation period is short. If the host does not die during the incubation period, the virus will die by itself. If the host dies, the host's corpse will start to turn into a bloodthirsty zombie at night. At present, we have not found an effective way to kill the virus other than fire. After Snape finished speaking, Zhang Su took out a photo album and put it on the table. In the album are all kinds of single photos of Harley that are suitable for all ages, developed from the film He Asked for Ginny Today, and these photos have been PS by Scarlet with magic. Haha, Lily's father-like eyes had been replaced with Harry's fucking eyes. After Scarlet, who had met Lily a long time ago, verified that the photos were, % similar. Snape reached out his hand to pick up the photo album on the table, but Zhang Su covered it with his hands first. Facing Snape's eyes that wanted to kill someone, Zhang Su said with a serious face, I still need you to help me pass a message to the Dark Lord, which can be used as the reason for me to come here today. Snape withdrew his hand and looked at Zhang Su gloomily. The Walking Dead must not be allowed to have rationality and wisdom. Zhang Su said solemnly. Needless to say too much, he believed that Voldemort could figure out the powerful relationship behind this. Mr. Zhang didn't want a natural disaster of the undead, especially when he gave Voldemort's son such a deadly name. And if things go wrong, he will have to stock up on Coke bottle caps in advance. Snape nodded solemnly. It was just a message, it was no big deal. Zhang Su was half of himself registered with the Dark Lord. At this moment, there was another knock on the door of Snape's house. Not long after Snape left the living room, an acquaintance followed him in. Hey, do you want an apple, Malfoy? Zhang Su greeted the pony, pointing to the apple rabbit on the table. Malfoy shook his head, and then carefully did it at the table, for fear of accidentally offending Zhang Su and being beaten up. Malfoy seemed to come to Snape to get something, so Snape brought him in and said you wait here before going upstairs. Seeing that Snape was not in the living room, Zhang Su first stood up and walked to Malfoy's side, patted him on the shoulder, then pointed to the photo album on the table, and then ran away immediately. Chapter 499 Ready to start school. Let go of me and I'm going to beat him up. Forget it, Harry, forget it degree. Although there were still a few days before leaving school, the Hogwarts castle was already filled with a unique vitality of young people. Harley and the others were released after being quarantined for 72 hours to make sure everything was safe. But for some reason, Harley knew part of the deal between Zhang Su and Snape immediately. Therefore, in the past few days, taking advantage of the fact that Zhang's strength had not recovered, Harley took the Marauders map and arrested Zhang everywhere. For the first time, Zhang Su escaped by relying on the iron armor curse attached to his robe. The second time, Zhang Su ran to the Muggle Studies classroom, got in with the password he had left before, and hid inside to beat him to death. For the third time, Zhang Su, who was basking in the sun on the top of the astronomy tower, escaped by jumping off the building with flying props. I don't know how many times this is. Today Harley finally managed to bed Zhang Su in the kitchen. Harry, listen to me explain, it's rare for everyone to get together. Let's discuss how to go to platform 9 of King's Cross Station the day after tomorrow. Cyrillic lettered out Harley didn't want to talk to Zhang Su, and threw a table at him with magic. When Zhang Su leaned back to avoid the flying table, what was in his mind was that if the current onlookers filmed this scene, then in 2 years, he could go to the Matrix to discuss copyright issues. Next, Hallie used the tables and chairs used by the students in the kitchen to form a wall, and blocked Zhang Su tightly in the corner. A cat's ears, a beaver's tail, a horse's hooves, a mouse's beard, whichever you want, or all of them standing in front of the wall of tables and chairs. Holly laughed loudly, and at the same time told Zhang Su, who was blocked in the corner, the punishment method she planned to use on him. However, after more than 10 minutes, Harry found that there was no sound coming from behind the walls of tables and chairs. The villain dies from talking too much. This is the text that Harry saw on a piece of parchment on the ground after removing the table, chairs and walls. As for Zhang, he had already ate a piece of Zioqiang biscuit given by the twin brothers. After becoming Zioqiang, he got out of the gap between the table and chairs, and then hid in a dark corner and ran away. After realizing that Zhang Su had run away, Harry took out the Marauder's map and found that he had returned to the dormitory. It's not that Harley didn't think about adding some cat ears to Zhang Su. While he was asleep, Harley tried her best to crack the spells on the door of Zhang Su's dormitory. Not long after she quietly came to Zhang Su's bedside, she fled Zhang Su's dormitory with tears in her eyes. On the bed, Zhang, who was half asleep and half awake, caught a few slimes in his dream and was woken up by being punched. From then on, Harley never got close to Zhang Su's dormitory. I failed to catch Zhang again. Yet, X3 the foursome of Ron, Hermione, Ginny, and Neville held pumpkin juice from the house-elves as Harry went from triumphant to downcast. Be sure to plug all the gaps next time. After Harley self-reflected, today's arrest came to an end. Although Hallie failed to arrest Zhang Su, what he said just now made Hallie have to pay attention to it. Hogwarts has a tradition that makes Zhang Su complain every year. That is, at the beginning of each year, students must board the train at platform 9 of King's Cross Station to Hogwarts. Zhang Su didn't find anything wrong with this at first, but only after he got to know many Hogwarts students did he discover the problem, because no matter where the students live, whether they live in England, Wales or Scotland, they all have to come to platform 9 of King's Cross Station early in the morning on the first day of school. And NBSP, there are some students in Hogwarts who live in Hogsmeade, and they only need to walk a few steps from their homes to Hogwarts. But they also need to get up early in the morning on the first day of school to pack their luggage and items, and then travel across the island of Great Britain from north to south to platform 9 of King's Cross Station in London, southern England, and then spend most of the day by train to the airport. Hogsmeade railway station is only a few steps away from home, and finally take a carriage pulled by a thestral to Hogwarts. Until now, Zhang Su still can't forget that the family member on the train worked at Hogsmeade railway station, and his house was less than 100 meters away from the train station. A painful expression on his face. He got on the train the night before school started that day, and followed the train from Hogsmeade to London. After getting on the bus, he found a compartment to sleep in, and when he got up the next morning, he was just in time to welcome the arrival of his classmates. Fortunately, Hogwarts didn't ask them to go to London by train when they went home for the holidays. So, do the 6 of us need to make another trip to London and then take the train back? During breakfast yesterday, Zhang Su asked Professor McGonagall this question. But Professor McGonagall did not answer on the spot. While taking the train to school is a social tradition, there are plenty of people who have broken it over the years. Half of Zhang Su and the others did not follow the tradition. Harley and Ron drove here once in the past, and Zhang Su later came to make dumplings in advance. After Zhang Su mentioned this matter just now, Harley approached Professor McGonagall at dinner for this matter. Because of the portrait of Dumbledore dozing off in the headmaster's office and the reason why he witnessed Dumbledore's murder there, Harry now has some small resistance to it. I think we don't need to go to the train station. Harry said to Professor McGonagall, I'm worried that because I'm on the train, the Death Eaters will attack the train again. Harry's reasoning was strong. After all, this matter has been learned from the past, although everyone knows that her real intention is not to let almost the whole school see her in this way. In particular, it is possible that some students may secretly have a connection with Malfoy's classmates. Professor McGonagall agreed to Harry's request after thinking about it for a while. If Voldemort went to attack the train in person again, He would have to pay a very high price to stop him. It was Zhang Su who came over and said to Harry and the others, "I think it's best for the Ministry of Magic to make arrangements to create the news that Harry is in Hogsmeade now, so that the mysterious man won't pay attention to the train gone." Then Harley looked at Zhang Su with eyes that could kill people. If she hadn't become like this now, she would just have to go to the Three Broomsticks bar for a drink. Zhang Su obviously has a solution to this. He said to Harley, "You can use the voice-changing spell to change your voice back first, and then go to the radio station to give a speech." Professor McGonagall didn't answer Zhang Su's words, but said, "Harry doesn't need to go to London anymore, but the Students' Union president and prefects must maintain order on the train and deal with special circumstances." Ron and Hermione couldn't refuse this request. Just everyone looked at Harley. The current male and female student council chairmen are all girls. Naturally, Professor McGonagall would not make such a mistake. She said to Zhang Su, "Can you use magic now?" Zhang Su conservatively estimated his own strength, and then said, "We can reach Neville's level in a short time." Neville grinned and said nothing. Most of his current skill points were on herbalism, which belonged to herbalism specialization, and the others were considered to be at the bottom of the first echelon. Professor McGonagall had the bottom line in her mind, and she said, "Then please temporarily replace Potter on the train to exercise the power of the student council president. If something unexpected happens, you can command all the students." "No problem." Zhang Su replied, "I'm going to London tomorrow, and I'll come back by train the day after tomorrow. If you have dumplings, remember to save a plate for me." Zhang Su finally said. Chapter 500 Quiet Diagon Alley. The wardrobe dances at midnight. In Diagon Alley, a wizard who covered himself in a black robe and hood suddenly spoke to a wizard walking in front of him in a low and hoarse voice from behind. These days, wizards dressed like this are not uncommon in Diagon Alley. "Ah, what the hell is that?" The sorcerer who was accosted turned his head and looked at the other person with caring eyes for the mentally retarded, and then accelerated his pace to avoid it. "The situation is weird now. Maybe those wizards who look abnormal will kill themselves in the next second." And the wizard who hid his whole body didn't show any abnormality, but turned his attention to the few other wizards in Diagon Alley. Now Diagon Alley has fallen into an unprecedented depression. Most of the shops have been closed, and many of them have been empty inside. Looking in from the window, there are only empty shelves and counters inside. Period. The shops are closed, and the customers naturally don't come. Since Voldemort's high-profile appearance last year, Diagon Alley's business has been declining day by day. In addition to purchasing the necessities of life, the wizards reduced their consumption needs in order to save their lives. As a result, Diagon Alley, which is the commercial center of the whole of the UK, is on the street. Not every store sells goods that are as suitable for owl delivery as those in Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, such as floor and soda, as well as Alice Owl Shop and Wonder Zoo. Sending ice cream with an owl is barely feasible, but sending owls and other pets with an owl is more difficult. Not long ago, after the Ministry of Magic transferred to Hogsmeade, the merchants in Diagon Alley saw that something was wrong, so they closed their business for 2 or 3 days to see the direction of the wind. At this time, the staff of the Ministry of Magic approached the bosses of each family and suggested that they go north together to contribute to the great cause. When the bosses first knew they were going to move to Hogsmeade, they actually refused, because they thought, "You can't tell me to move right away first. Let's think about it, and we don't want to say, who knows how long you can last in Hogsmeade. If you are finished before Halloween, the mysterious people will definitely scold us by then, and you will do your best. It proves that your conscience is greatly damaged." We said let us think about it first, and later we found that they were reliable, and they didn't take too much advantage of the mysterious person. After half a month, at least we couldn't see that they were going to end. After the news spread that Hogsmeade repelled 2 Death Eaters' attacks and killed Karkaroff, merchants in Diagon Alley were already excited. After the news of the zombies among the Death Eaters spread, rumors about the mysterious man ordering his subordinates to arrest men in Diagon Alley every 1, 3, 5, women every 2, 4, and 6, and children to become zombies on Sundays spread throughout the British wizarding world open. In just 2 days, this rumor has become a buzz, and at the same time, it has become more and more logical and self-consistent in the process of evolution. In the end, even Voldemort believed these rumors, and even asked about it during the daily work meeting, which made the somewhat absent-minded Snape look confused. And the instigator of this rumor was dreaming of slime in bed at this time. Only in this way, the merchants in Diagon Alley will be empty. and let the diagonal the bosses in the alley made up their minds to move north because of the dark wizards from Nocturne Alley. Since the beginning of this year, more and more dark wizards have defected to Voldemort. Naturally, these dark wizards did not come to the UK to work as housekeepers, and they would naturally run to Nocturne Alley for a while. There were so many dark wizards in Diagon Alley that even the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic didn't dare to take care of them. Now that the boss they defected to gained power, they became even more unscrupulous. I don't need money to eat out at the Leaky Cauldron, let alone some ice cream from you. Then Florin Fusco, the owner of the Florin Cold Drink Shop, who had just argued with the Dark Wizard, was captured by the Death Eaters. This incident became the spark that ignited the fuse, and other merchants who died of rabbits and foxes packed up the goods in the store overnight and went north to Hogsmeade. When Malfoy, the pseudo-minister of magic who was notified, arrived the next morning, there were only a few shops in Diagon Alley that were open except Gringotts with Death Eaters behind them. It is said that the old horse's face was extremely ugly at that time. Before 1752, the General Lease Agreement of businessmen who leased shops in the UK stipulated that the traditional rent payment dates were 4 times a year, namely March 3rd, June 25th, September 6th and December 24th. The International Statute of Secrecy was signed into effect in 9, so these days have been preserved in the British wizarding world, and they have become days for paying rent and taxes. Now the funds of the pseudo-magic ministry can be said to be stretched. A large number of taxpayers ran away when there was still a month before the tax collection. The old horse was not so angry that he died on the spot, which is considered to be a strong heart. At this time, the wizard walking in Diagon Alley who hid himself under his robe and hood thought of this incident, and remembered the old horse's face blacker than the bottom of the pot at that time, and couldn't help laughing sound. Ollivander's one shop has now closed and moved north. The place where the signboard Ollivander, making excellent ones since 380 BC is now empty, and a thin layer has fallen on the doorframe of dust. The one shop of the Ollivander family, which has now temporarily moved to Hogsmeade, is run by Ollivander Jr., the son of Ollivander. Old Ollivander disappeared last year, and everyone can figure out who took him with their toes. Old Ollivander is an extremely important talent. The Ministry of Magic has been trying every means to rescue him, but he has not been able to find the place where he was held, and there is no news. It can be said that no one is alive or dead. The one who was looking for someone to connect with in Diagon Alley had nothing to do with this. After the Magi's Huang was burned, he didn't know where Voldemort and the others went to settle down now. But did he dance for the dresser or the candlestick? Not far from the former site of Ollivander's one shop, another wizard who also hid himself under his robe and hood answered the other's signal in a high-pitched voice. "I'm selling some of these Kujik tapestry. Would you like to buy one?" "Yes, I want to buy one. Do you have blue ones?" "Yes, it is as blue as the blue and clean world." "Then let me see tomorrow night." The two wizards separated after chatting like friends who haven't seen each other for a long time, and then disappeared into the fireplace in the Gringotts Hall one after another. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.